Hello, people. Oh, there's the TikTok Shives from Dana. I just saw it. You got me with two of them this week, Dana. One of them was in private before we went live on Wednesday, and now she gets me with yeah. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. Glad you could make it. Thank you for joining me. Hello to everybody in the chat. Look, there's a super chat from Kirok right away, even though he knows that I don't usually acknowledge super chats until after I get through the patron questions. But what the hell? I'm looking at it right now. So Kirok says, thank you for the super chat, by the way. Kirok says, hey, Steve, imagine this threshold from Voyager. Imagine they brought back the baby salamanders and made them human babies. Jeopardy theme. Okay. they now, so they're human babies on Voyager, so the writers will just ignore them for the... I mean, look, the writers of TNG had no idea what to do with kids on the ship, and TNG was a way better show than Voyager. So do I think the writers of Voyager would have any interesting ideas to do with babies on the ship? No, I don't. I'll ask him about D&D. I mean, if you want me to ignore you, you can ask me about D&D. All right. Welcome, everybody. Once again, thank you for being here. As always, I will be answering questions that were submitted ahead of time by my wonderful Patreon patrons and channel members for the first big hunk of the show. I'll try to get through them as quickly as I can while also being fair to all of the questions. And then, and only then, will I turn my full attention to the live chat. So if you, like our friend Kirok, are planning on being generous and throwing a super chat at me, if possible, please wait until I get through the patron and member questions, and then I will, have time to acknowledge the super chats and people who don't pay, who don't throw in a super chat, who just want to ask a question for free. Those are fine too. But I won't see those while I'm doing the patron and member questions because I'm not paying attention to the chat. So if you have anything you want to ask me in the chat, please try to hold off until I get through the patron and member questions, and then I will spend the remainder of the show hanging out with the chat and talking about whatever you wonderful people want to talk about. Oh, Sean Huntley says, why are you always spoiling the spoilers? I don't even know what that means. Okay, here we go. Let's do the patron and member questions. And the first one of those comes from Joe Goes Over, who says, in The Trouble with Tribbles, the bar fight begins with Klingon officer Korax insulting the Enterprise. An angry Scotty calmly asks, laddie, don't you think you should rephrase that? To which Korax mockingly replies, you're right, I should, in a pronounced Scottish accent. As an alien whose first language could not be English, this would be like an American watching anime and hearing the difference between Hokkaido and Kansai dialects. I know it's just a TV show, and I should really just relax, but I find myself mildly obsessed with possible in-universe explanations. Do Klingon military academies teach different Earther accents so their agents can infiltrate more easily? Did Korax spend enough time listening to Scotty before the fight that he could mimic his accent? Did the Universal Translator recognize that the Klingon was trying to be a dick and conveyed his words that way to keep their intent? What's your take on this, Steve? I feel it makes for an interesting tangent. Well, the correct answer is what you said already, which is it's just a show. You should really just relax. But I think if you want to go down this road, you've overlooked what to me is the most obvious explanation, and that is our friend Korax was actually raised by human parents who were traitors to the Federation and betrayed Earth and Starfleet and actually went and lived on the Klingon homeworld as Klingons. And of course, these Earth traitors were originally from Scotland and retained their, natural Scottish dialects when speaking English. And probably once they learned Klingon, they had a really delightful sounding Scottish accented form of Klingon as well. And that is how young Korax, as he was growing up and learning both languages, because of course he would have grown up in a bilingual household, learning Klingon, the language of his world, and also learning Scottish accented English, the language of his parents. And of course, once he got exposed to other people and went through the Klingon Academy and et cetera, he learned to speak a less Scottishly accented form of English as well. But that's why he has a real good handle on that accent, because his adopted parents, who were human traders, who went to live on the Klingon homeworld, had raised him in such a way. Some random geek who grumbles about having only 500 characters per question soon instead of 1,000 characters, but understands, well, it's not for like another month. And then even, you'll adjust. When my balance was over 13, I think this is like a fragment. I think maybe you didn't paste the whole thing into the thing. I'm not sure, but when my balance was over 13K, but now I can't make any more charges. I guess you're referring to your credit card. This also happened 2 weeks ago before payday, but my balance then was 16,900-ish. So I'm going to assume they won't allow me to charge my Chase card more than 16K-ish, 3K more than the credit limit. Or that should be a good rule of thumb. Don't worry about me. I'm not worried about my credit card debt or my credit score, and I can survive until payday. What I am worried about is my disabled friends who will always need money in order to survive. Joanna in Phoenix each month, Naz and Linequin often. I know concerned and worried friends would want me to focus on my debt, but who is going to step up and be a glucose parent, aka sugar daddy, to my friends when I don't give them money? Well, but people who want you to be concerned about your own finances and your own well-being, that's understandable. That's just a good friend or family member or whoever that might be who is expressing that concern, reminding you, take care of yourself. Like, it's not a sin, religious or secular, to take care of yourself, and that's okay. Don't exhaust yourself completely, because then who's going to help your friends if you're just completely tapped out for good? And Geek, who is a patron and a channel member, asks a second question. Some random geek who will accept the 500 character limit when it happens. I'm glad that you've reiterated that. Continuing on, but Geek, what about you owning a home? Owning a home in this economy? Is it possible for millennials to own a home? Maybe for 15% of us, but not everyone. Or are there some people who don't deserve to have a house? I've given up on owning a home, retiring at all, or paying off my credit card debt. Someone has to give Joanna Roberts $1,500 a month. Phoenix probably also needs $1,500 a month too. And they want their Ko-fi goal of $3,000 filled by September, or they will lose hope in existing. And I still don't know if Naz's SSI problems have been fixed. So Naz and LQ still need $1,000 each month to replace the SSI, and they still needed help every 2 weeks for bills and groceries. I boost my friends' links on my socials, some random geek on most sites, and fundraise on my streams, some random geek on Twitch and YouTube streams every Sunday for sure, but my friends and I rarely get any bites. I don't blame people. Everyone is fucking poor. That is the point of capitalism. And as always, I'm sure Geek has shared the links in the chat, and if not, we'll be doing so soon, and we'll also do that again at the end of the stream, or near the end of the stream. And I will mention it then, but I will also mention it now since this is the subject of Geek's questions. Charitylinks.page. And if you are not so poor that you can't afford it, and you are so moved, if it won't take food off your table, and you are so moved to help out, consider helping out some of our friends, the friends that Geek mentions by name in their question here, and also others that are listed at charitylinks.page. David Colby is a one-track lover down a two-way lane. Driving too fast down the highway must have been insane. I just watched Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. Oh. And you know what the problem with 80s parodies is? If you want to parody it correctly, you need to have some real fucking banger synths. And now I just genuinely like the show. The real issue I have with Dark Place is that I actually genuinely want a high-concept hospital occult horror show where a two-fisted adventurer doctor tries to save lives and slay demons with the help of his plucky and earnest sidekick and the new psychic lady that just transferred in. If you just did that genuinely, instead of making it a gag, you could run for a solid 2.5 seasons that 5 people would watch. I don't really have a question. I just finally have context for the I know authors who use subtext and they're all cowards line, and that's nice. Oh, I know. Would you watch Dark Place if it was still going? I'd tune in every fucking week, man. So would I. I love Dark Place. I think it's one of the funniest shows, at least of the last, 25 or 30 years. It's brilliant. I love Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. I mean, I think there's only like 10 episodes of it altogether. It's one, and they're all on YouTube. Um, and it may be available in in a more official release as well. I haven't really checked because I know they're on YouTube, but I mean, I will watch those. I think I've watched the whole thing through at least 3 times, and I am ready to watch it again. Like it's a quick watch because the episodes are only like half an hour long each, and I mean, it's just so goddamn funny. Every episode is just so incredibly funny. So yeah, I'm glad you have discovered it, and I'm glad you enjoy it because I'm right there with you. I love it, and yes, if they were still doing it, and it was still that good, I would be watching every single episode. I absolutely adore Dark Place. Donovan, hey Steve, I was listening to the late seating review of 300, and it had me wondering if you've ever seen The Northman, which goes out of its way to show the darker side of its Viking protagonists. In fact, one of the film's few historical inaccuracies comes when a Viking calls people they just raided savages, when there is no evidence to suggest that the Vikings ever saw anyone from different cultures as lesser. Even when they landed in Newfoundland, take that, Columbus, they got along well with the indigenous people until the language barrier led to them fighting and deciding to leave them alone. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Robert Eggers as a director. I I I liked The Northman, but unlike most of his other work, it kind of leaves me cold. Like, I mean, technically, it's absolutely a masterpiece. Like, technically, it is so well done. Some really extraordinary action scenes. That like raid scene on the village, where a lot of it is done like all in one continuous shot, is just stunning. And the cinematography is great, and the costumes and everything. Like, it's technically superb. But the story just kind of leaves me cold. Like, I don't really care about this guy. I don't really care about his family. I don't really care what happens to him or any of the other characters. It's beautiful to look at. It's exquisite to sort of follow and see just, what the product of all the various techniques that was used to create it are. Like, I can't say enough good about it on a technical and a visual sort of artistic level. But in terms of story, it's just like, all right, oh, she's gonna have his kid, his family line will go on. Good, I guess. But yeah, I mean, visually, technically, it's extraordinary. Fargrim, howdy, Steve, from myself and my husband, as always. Hello to both of you. Do you think you'd ever do like a group meetup? Maybe at a convention or something. I think it would be cool to meet as a community. That would require me to go to a convention, which is unlikely to happen in the near or far future. But it's a nice idea. I'm glad that that you would enjoy something like that. But I'm not planning on something like that, and I really don't see it happening anytime soon. William Tucker, young Uhura or mature Uhura? I think she was an underrealized character. Well, yeah. I mean, in TOS for sure, she was a very underrealized character. I mean, it's hard to vote if you're saying young Uhura or mature. It's hard to vote against Nichelle Nichols. I mean, Celia is great as young Uhura on Strange New Worlds, but Nichelle is just a legend and does so. The thing is, like, Celia has a lot more to work with. Like, Uhura is more of a well-rounded character in Strange New Worlds and generally gets more to do and more meaningful stuff to do when she's featured in Strange New Worlds episodes. Whereas, I mean, TOS Uhura, there are no Uhura episodes of TOS. There really aren't. The closest thing we get to an Uhura episode is in the animated series, and it's actually one that I just reviewed last week for my my retro reviews series, the Lorelei Signal. That's really the closest we get to an Uhura episode in the TOS era, which is a shame because, I mean, Nichelle Nichols was, not only was she, just a unbelievably beautiful woman, she was a really talented actor. She had fantastic comic timing. She had range. She was versatile. And she was great, and she could have done a lot more than what they gave her on TOS. They just didn't give her a whole lot. But it's hard to, if we're in an Uhura, you know, which Uhura is better? As much as I love them, and also Zoe Saldana is a great Uhura as well in the Kelvin timeline movies. We haven't had a bad Uhura yet. Like, they've all been great. But it's hard not to pick Nichelle if we're going to choose favorites. John Everett, have you ever been to Wonderfest? If you're not aware, Wonderfest is an annual meeting of science fiction nerds held in Louisville each summer. Creators and artists and fans always make it a great weekend getaway. You should stop by next year, presuming we still have a society by then. You're not going to see me there. I don't go to conventions. I don't enjoy conventions. I know. But again, I'm really glad that you go and you have a good time. And I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade, but no, I'm not going to be there probably ever. And unless somebody decides to like pay me a lot of money to go, which is the only way I would go. Or the only way I would, if some convention came to me or to Jason and said, we would like you to do a live recording of the Ensign's Log podcast at our convention, and we'll pay your travel expenses and your hotel costs to go and be a part of it, then, I would consider that, just, to get to do that, just to record a podcast live with my friends and, have that experience. But anything short of that, no, the idea of going to a convention just to go to a convention is not remotely attractive to me. But again, if it's your thing, I think that's awesome. And I hope you had a good time this year, and I hope you have a good time next year. A second bite at the atheism apple. War, what is it good for? Hi, Steve. John here. As for my aforementioned second bite at the atheism apple, Steve, surprisingly to me, I found your An Atheist Reads presentations difficult to get through because they're so detailed. Do you have any opinion essay-style presentations about atheism which may be easier to digest? You have sometimes mentioned that you feel a revolution is needed. However, practically, this won't be achieved. What kind of revolution, and why won't it happen? Related to the song referenced in my submissions title, what are your 3 most favorite anti-war protest music albums? Well, I'm not sold on the idea that a revolution is necessary, like to fix all of our social ills. And I'm definitely not sold on, whether or not, if there is ever a true revolution, that on the other side of it, things would be any better. But I believe I have said in the past that it may be necessary. I don't know if I've ever fully endorsed it and said, yes, we should have I definitely haven't said, yes, we should have. What I say is, can we fucking try voting first? Like, can the 30 or 40% of the country who is eligible to vote, who just doesn't bother, can we try to get them involved in the process? Maybe it won't work, maybe it won't be enough, but can we at least give it a shot before we jump straight to let's overthrow the government and have a revolution? And also, where are the people fighting in the revolution going to come from when we can't even get people to fucking vote in an election every 2 years? But anyway, that's my basic feel on revolutions. I'm not completely ideologically opposed to the very idea ever, but I feel like we haven't really explored the other options yet, and our apathy toward the other much easier options available to us does not fill me with optimism for how the revolution would go if it ever was actually started. As for the atheist stuff, I probably do have videos that are a little more digestible in terms of, my own feelings about atheism. But I can't think of a specific one I can point you to right now. I know there are videos I've done in the past that are sort of like my responses from an atheist perspective to Christian, positions or arguments or questions or whatever. But I haven't done one for a very long time. But those are generally more, broad-based than, an Atheist Reads series, which is a specific response, chapter by chapter to an apologetics book. But like I said, you might have to hunt around on my channel for something like that. I can't think of a specific one that I can point you to. I can't think of 3 anti-war protest albums. I can give you some songs. What's Going On, Marvin Gaye. Um, Masters of War, Bob Dylan. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. That might be my favorite. My specific anti-war protest song might be that. Masters of War. That Dylan goes hard on that one, baby. Um Actually no, there as far as an album of anti-war songs, Flags of Freedom by Neil Young, which is a song of anti-war an album of anti-war protest songs that was released during the Iraq War in like 2003, 2004, like during the George W. Bush administration. Excellent album. Some really, really great songs on that one. Also, I mean, and back to songs. Pete Seeger had some great protest songs. The Big Muddy, which was a great Vietnam protest song. Bring 'Em Home, which is a really great song in which Bruce Springsteen covered for his American Land album about what 10, 12 years ago, something like that. The Seeger sessions, and then he released like a special version of it. They had a few extra tracks. The Springsteen Seeger sessions album, fantastic. It's basically Bruce Springsteen singing folk songs that were made popular by Bob Seger, and it's just fucking perfect. It's one of my favorite albums ever. My WWE fandom, yay, boo, mostly boo. I feel like I know where you're coming from on this one. John, again, my WWE fandom is waning. Twofold reasoning. First is due to WWE's total fragmentation related to streaming platforms, rights fees, exorbitant ticket costs, which are passed on to event audiences, and forced viewer fragmentation because of diverging streaming platforms. Second, being that I'm no longer youthfully whimsical. Thoughts? Oh, well, I prefer the art form from 2 or 3 decades ago. There are now dozens of pro wrestling autobiographies authored by people representative of that era. What is the best way to get these memoirs onto their proper place? In optional audio formats, I have Jim Ross's first 2 books. Steve, do you have any audio format pro wrestling memoir recommendations? P.S. I'm willing to acquiesce on the 500 character limit on submissions. I know there's been some fervor. However, please don't take away dual citizenship within the kingdom of Shives. Especially because someone within the 99 cents member level can't send milestone messages. No, at the moment, the plan is to still allow people who are both patrons and members to submit 2 questions if they want. So don't worry about that. Wrestling biographies. I don't know if I've ever actually read a wrestling biography. I talked about this one with Dana earlier this week, and she actually read. And I mean, Dana's, Dana has a much more normal life than I do. She is not. She has enjoyed pro wrestling from time to time, but is not like a fan of it like I am. But Dana actually read Mick Foley's first book, Have a Nice Day, when it came out, and has always spoken very highly of it. I've still not even read it. I've never read any of Mick Foley's books. Nothing against Mick Foley. I love Mick Foley. I just haven't read the books. But Dana speaks very highly of Have a Nice Day, Mick Foley's first book, and also of Kurt Angle's WWE biography, which I think is just called It's True, It's True. She really likes that one too. But I cannot speak on this subject because I have not read nor listened to the audiobook versions of any wrestler biographies. As far as your WWE fandom waning, yeah, the fragmentation of the streaming platforms is something that I'm starting to notice as well. Like when they started the WWE network in like 2011, 2012, it was like, oh, look, there's one, you can subscribe to this one service and there's one place you can go for all your WWE wrestling needs, right? And we won't have every single show live because we have network deals, but once a certain amount of time has passed, it'll all be archived and you can watch all the old shows. And, like it's one place you can go if you're a wrestling fan, and especially if you're a WWE fan or a fan of any of the companies that they own the tape libraries for, which is a huge chunk of like classic territory wrestling and WCW and AWA and all that stuff. It's one place you can go. And now, at least as far as the new stuff is concerned, the new pay-per-views and the ongoing TV shows, it's like, no, everything is in a different place now. And I guess that's good for the company because, they can get rights fees from a bunch of different places at once. But as a fan, it really sucks. I was listening to Jim Cornette's podcast the other day, And he said he described it like uh, when wrestling got huge the last time in the late 90s, and most of that was due to the Steve Austin versus Mr. McMahon feud in WWE or WWF at the time still. And the reason why that program appealed to so many people beyond just like hardcore wrestling nerds was that it was a simple story about a working class guy or a working class coded guy, you know, Steve Austin, who was fighting back against his evil boss. And now in 2025, wrestling is so expensive that only the evil bosses can afford the good seats at the wrestling show. So, you know, yeah, it's not great. It's not great. Adam A, after having watched If Republicans Said the Quiet Part's Loud about Gavin Newsom, my wife wanted to know how much of this was inspired from Paradise Lost. I find this a fascinating question because none of it was consciously inspired by Paradise Lost, and I'd be really interested to know which elements of it reminded your wife of Paradise Lost. Um, and I assume we're talking about, the John Milton poem, and not the documentary about a series of horrible child murders, which is also great documentary. But no, as far as I know, I mean, and certain consciously, none of it was inspired from Paradise Lost. But maybe there's an unconscious connection that I'm missing that I would love to know more about that. General Contact Unit problem child. So imagine it's early 2029, the year before J.D. Vance lost the election, but when it comes time to certify, he refuses to certify his own loss, presumably claiming some version of the fake electorate conspiracy. He throws it to the House of Representatives, and a Republican there gives, and a Republican, I guess, majority there gives him the presidency. Everyone knows this is what's really happening, but the institutions that control state power, i.e. mostly the military, decide to go along with it. So Vance is sworn in on January 20th. What do you think you'd go on your YouTube channel and say the day after all that happens? Basically, what do you think you will say to your audience the day after the end of American democracy? P.S. Feel like I've not shown you a pic of my dog in a while. So here's Rusty sunbathing. And actually, someone else has a pic that they want me to show later on. So we'll get a preview of that. So there's Isaiah's pic from a little bit later. And here's the doggy pic. I think that's a little distorted, isn't it? Well, anyway, the doggy pic doesn't really look right. I think it's the photo format and the fact that I didn't actually get it until like half an hour before the show started. But trust me, there's a cute dog in there somewhere. Anyway, sorry about that, but you know, these things happen. I don't know what I'll say, man, if that happens. I don't know what I'll say. Like we'll have to wait and see. I don't know. I don't sit around imagining what I'm going to say if American democracy is, if that, I don't know. I hope I don't find myself in that situation. And if that situation does happen, I hope I think of something good to say. But I don't have it yet. Mickey D. Tommaso. How do I tell my brother that his favorite Superman and Batman suck? He loves Zack Snyder's renditions. He even loves the Snyder Cut. I love him and won't give him up no matter how bad his taste in movies is. You don't have to tell him anything, man. As long as he's not like an asshole about it. Like if like lots of normal people like Zack Snyder movies. I don't personally get it. Like I really don't. Other than Watchmen and to a certain extent his Dawn of the Dead movie. I really don't see the appeal of the man's work. But a lot of people who are not like, you know, cultishly devoted Snyder bros find something to enjoy in his work. And that's fine. So if your brother is one of those, if he's just someone who likes those movies and you presumably agree with me that they're not very good, there's no intervention that needs to happen. He just has taste that differs from yours. From your perspective, he has bad taste. That's okay. You don't need to do anything. I mean, if you want to tell him that they suck, just say, hey, man, I think your favorite Batman and Superman suck. There you go. But like, I don't really feel like I don't really feel like there needs to be any kind of concerted effort here. Like, if the only problem is he likes those movies and you think they're the shits, well, okay, you know, different taste. Damian Williams, hey Steve, here's an update since the last Q&A. I have since made the decision that I am moving back home. I'm about a quarter of the way through my main funding goal. I'm hoping to land on my feet in a better job market, but donations are still appreciated to my GoFundMe because I'm going to have to replace some stuff I have to leave behind. It is what it is. What I'm truly losing is I'm going to have to give up my cat. I'm really sorry to hear that. I hope you're able to find a good place to rehome the cat. That sucks. So I couldn't, when my cat was alive, I could not imagine having to part with her. That's terrible. I'm really sorry to hear that. And Damien's GoFundMe is still linked in the description of this live stream, just as it was last time. So if you are so moved to contribute to Damien's GoFundMe to help out in the situation, the link is in the description, and I would encourage you to do that. Best stressed. Okay, I wasn't going to ask anything this week, but then I watched the Enterprise finale video, and how do I phrase this as a question? How many years on Rurapente should a Star Trek writer be fictionally sentenced to for taking an idea as interesting as, let's do a diplomatic drama about the formative years of the Federation, and turning it into yet another excuse to revisit a tired property that only a very small cadre of fans even care about at this point, but which will nonetheless be dug up from the grave in the name of never having to invent new characters? Honestly, I'm much more friendly to nostalgia than you are. I'm completely here for the Captain Kirk et al.'s backstory aspects of Strange New Worlds, but this idea loses me entirely, especially if it requires me to believe that Captain Archer, as written by Aaron Sorkin, is a good idea rather than an unholy tonal chimera. I love that phrase, an unholy tonal chimera. Well, sentences to Rurapente are for life, so that's what they should get. They should remain on Rurapente until they die, because that is why it is known throughout the galaxy as the aliens' graveyard. No, I agree with you completely. I mean, I personally do not even think diplomatic drama about the formative years of the Federation is a remotely interesting idea. I couldn't give less of a shit about any of that. But again, as I always say, it depends on execution. The most important thing is execution. It is entirely possible that somebody could make that show with that exact premise, and I would watch it and think, holy shit, this is great, because it tells an interesting story, it has interesting characters, etc., all the things that a show needs to do to be good. Does it have to be centered around Captain Archer? Nope, it sure doesn't. And even if it is centered around Captain Archer, does it need to have anybody else from Enterprise in it? Nope, it sure doesn't. And if it does come into existence in some form, and it is a Scott Bakula show, and he is back playing Jonathan Archer, I mean, again, as I said in my video, this is Fantasyland type thinking, but I would love it if Captain Archer is the only character, it's the only legacy character in it. I don't want an Enterprise reunion show. I don't want an anything reunion show. I want a new show about new people, right? So we totally agree on that. Unholy tonal chimera is a wonderful turn of phrase. Wolfram and Hart. So a few months ago, I happened about the fan-led Star Trek TOS sequel of Who Mourns for Adonis. It was from 2013 and stars the, in 2025, now 96-year-old Michael Forrest. We're so lucky William Shatner is alive and well. But doesn't this time period, when Paramount shut down all the mostly non-profit Star Trek projects, some quite good, may have gone too far in restricting? Did you ever like them, Steve? And if so, which ones? And is better to just have unsanctioned parodies like a Filmation Super Friends style ending of the Star Trek Voyager episode Threshold, going past Warp 10, and Janeway and Paris are coupling with salamander offspring, quite good in this style, on a terrible Voyager episode, and yet YouTube's algorithm sent a bunch of AI-created Star Trek redneck parodies that are something hard to describe here but seem popular. Should we be worried about this AI trend? Let's see what happens when the bubble bursts. I keep hearing people saying, "Oh, the AI bubble is about to burst," and I'm over here going, "All right, well, don't, don't hold off on my account. Go ahead, burst. Go ahead. You know, it's annoying. I mean, I've seen thumbnails of those kinds of videos, like the redneck Star Trek. I haven't watched it. I made the mistake of watching one of the like this was like a year ago, 2 years ago when these things started popping up. One of those like, oh, it's a DC superhero movie. If it was filmed in Panavision in 1950, whatever, and it had an interesting looking thumbnail, so I clicked on it, and then it was like, oh no, never mind, just AI slop. It's just a series of like weirdly disconnected 5-second videos with oh look at if you ignore the fact that it's obviously just AI generated shit, it kind of looks like what Superman might have looked like in the 50s. Maybe, it's like so I don't watch, I don't. And because I don't watch them, as a result, I don't usually get them recommended to me, but every once in a while one will pop up. I have enjoyed some of the fan films. Yeah, the one you're referencing, it was a part of Star Trek Continues, which I think was by far the best one. The only shame about that one is that the man who was behind it, the creator of it and the director of most of the episodes, and also he was the actor who played Captain Kirk, Vic Mignogna, turned out to be kind of a creep in real life, and his main job was as a voiceover artist, mostly for anime stuff. And so he would go to conventions a lot, and he has been banned from most conventions for sexually inappropriate behavior, for making homophobic remarks. He's just kind of a piece of shit, and that sucks. That the guy who plays Captain Kirk and created and directed and co-wrote most of the episodes of the best Star Trek fan film series is that kind of a guy. Like it sort of casts a pall over the whole thing. But if you can ignore the odiousness of him in real life, Star Trek Continues is great. It's one of the best fan series. It's maybe the best fan produced thing I've ever seen of anything. Star Trek, Star Wars, Batman, whatever. Like it's the pinnacle of fan made productions to me. And I mean, the one that came before that was clearly an inspiration for it was Star Trek New Voyages, that eventually rebranded itself Star Trek Phase 2. That it wasn't nearly as technically accomplished, or I mean, the acting was a lot more amateurish as well, but it had some really good episodes. And it was the one that had episodes that guest starred Walter Koenig and George Takei, and both of those episodes are really good. So yeah, I enjoyed that. If you're upset about Paramount cracking down on fan films, you need to take it up with the guy who was behind Axanar, because it's all his fault. He's the one who ruined it for everybody else. I mean, and I feel like it's a pretty cut and dry case. Paramount was very tolerant of fan films. They were very happy to allow people to make fan films. And then the Axanar guy came along and fucking ruined it for everybody by blatantly trying to profit off of his fan production, which was the one rule that Paramount laid out for the fan film producers. They said, look, we don't mind y'all doing fan productions. Just don't make any money on it. Just don't sell it. Don't use it for your own profit. As long as that's the deal, as long as it's like, you're just doing it for the love of Star Trek, go ahead, go nuts, have fun. And then the Axanar guy came along and fucked it all up for everybody. So I'm not mad at Paramount about it. If you want to be mad at somebody about it, be mad at him about it. Matthias, hi, Steve. Why do you think in the modern day there's still such an obsession with the Second Amendment? And why do you think that obsession comes from the right wing in particular? And is it just me, or do the right wing justices on the SCOTUS ignore the phrase well-regulated militia in their reading of the Second Amendment? Well, of course they do, and so do most other Second Amendment fanatics. Why is there such an obsession with it, and why is it coming from the right? That's kind of a chicken and the egg situation. I'm not sure which came first. It's such a problem and such an obsession with so many people in this country because it has been so relentlessly promoted from the right. And the right has largely controlled the political narratives in this country for the last several decades because the Democrats have been too cowardly and reticent and derelict in their duty to really fight back in the ways that they should have been fighting back, at least on a consistent basis, that a lot of people, a lot of conservative leaning people, a lot of right leaning people in this country have been convinced that owning a gun is not just something that they should be allowed to do for, practical reasons, for self-defense, or safety, or to help out in a dangerous situation or whatever, but they feel that it is a natural right. Like they look upon gun ownership with the same degree of seriousness as, like, freedom of speech and freedom of religion. And I have always found that to be completely fucking ridiculous. These rights are not remotely comparable. You're telling me the right to own a gun, not the right to self-defense, by the way, not the right to self-defense. And those two are very often conflated. Not the right to self-defense, the right specifically to own a particular kind of weapon. That has been elevated to the level of freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of the press, like these fundamental freedoms that any, free and just and fair society needs to protect. Equality under the law, things that you absolutely have to have a free and fair and equal and democratic society. And somehow they've convinced themselves and convinced each other that owning a gun is just as important, if not more important, than all of those rights. And the story they tell themselves to sort of jack themselves off and to justify this is they say, well, we need to have these guns so we can fight back against tyranny. Where are they? Where are they? It's important to have an armed populace so a tyrannical government can never take advantage of the people. We're waiting. And that's not me saying that the Second Amendment nuts should be turning to violence against the government. I'm not saying that, and I'm not recommending that. I'm just noting that that is not what is happening. That they have spent decades saying we have the right to own firearms, and the public cannot be disarmed because then they'd be at the mercy of a tyrannical government. And if the government ever started doing the kinds of shit we've been warning you about, if the government ever started denying people's rights and arresting people without cause and trying to impose its will on the people and go beyond the Constitution, and if the president ever tried to become a dictator, why, you'll be glad that all us Second Amendment absolutists had our guns, because we're the ones that are going to save this country from tyranny. Okay. Well, go on then. Isn't it funny how none of the right-wing gun nuts is doing anything in the face of the looming government tyranny under which we are all living at this very moment? And again, that's not me saying or recommending that they should. That's me just pointing out that they're not. But yes, well-regulated militia is completely ignored by all of those types of people. Andy Lawler, who thinks it's a damn shame that more school children were mowed down, but at least Gazans are still being murdered. Am I right? Andy always puts it in perspective. Hey, Steve, as you read this, I've literally only a few hours ago moved my youngest daughter into her university dorm, Carroll University. Go Pioneers. I'm simultaneously proud, excited for her, and scared shitless. There's always information about rushing sororities, which I think are a complete waste of time, money, and effort. I was recruited by 2 fraternities during my first attempt at college, but I don't drink or see a reason to pay dues to wear Greek letters, take abuse, drink to excess, be horrifyingly racist, or commit rape, so I noped out. When you were in college, were you in a frat? Either way, what do you think of them? You don't strike me as a frat, Chad, but others' takes on Greek life differ from mine. Thanks, and have a great weekend, everybody. Others' takes may differ from yours, but mine don't. I think at best, fraternities and sororities are a waste of time, and at worst, they are exactly what you described them as in your question. They are incubators of the worst imaginable attitudes and behaviors for young people. They are codifiers of privilege. They, and they're excuses for college students who don't need much encouragement in these areas, for the most part, to indulge their worst instincts and their most self-destructive instincts, and, to drink and do drugs and fuck to the point that it becomes a danger to their health and to the health and safety of others. And I just generally think they're terrible and that they shouldn't exist and that colleges and universities just shouldn't have them at all. So no, I was not in one when I was in college. Now, granted, I was a non-traditional student. I was 25 when I started college and I never lived on campus, so it was never really an option for me anyway. But even if it had been, no, I would not have wanted to join a frat. I absolutely abhor them. So you and I are very much on the same page as far as that goes. Agent Meister, who never lies when he has sand in his boots. Commodore, I finished it for you. Peldor Joy Steve, you've said in the past that you do not want to see Jor-El or anything from Krypton in your Superman stories. But how absolute is that? Jor-El and Lara featured in the recent Superman movie, not to mention Marlon Brando's performance in the 78 movie. Are you content with flashbacks to Krypton once nothing Kryptonian encroaches on the present day? And how do you feel about the likes of Zod, Krypto, and Supergirl in Superman stories? Would that extend to other characters? How do you feel about Thomas Wayne showing up in Batman stories? An alternate universe of him actually did a few years ago. I myself skipped that run mainly because of that premise, and if the reviews are to be believed, I didn't miss much. Last question, I promise, on a slight tangent, how did you find Michael Shannon's portrayal of General Zod in Man of Steel? I loved it. I mean, it's never absolute because my only really absolute rule is that the story has to be good. So I will waive any rule or any preference would probably be a better way to say it. I will waive any preference I have if the story is good enough. So no, I have absolutely no problem with Jor-El and Lara showing up in the form of a recorded message in the new Superman movie because it's part of that story and it works extremely well as a part of that story. I mean, and in terms of Marlon Brando as Jor-El, I have said before many times, I would be perfectly happy if somebody just took a hatchet and just hacked off that entire Kryptonian prologue from Superman. I think the movie would be improved by it. I don't think we need any of it. Marlon Brando, and I think it's only there to justify Marlon Brando getting top billing in the movie and to make sure that Marlon Brando agreed to be in the movie so that they could market the movie as starring Marlon Brando and they could say they had a big star in their movie. I think that's the reason why there's so much Krypton stuff at the beginning of the, the 78 Superman movie. That's it. It doesn't need it. It doesn't serve the story. Everything we learn in that, except positive. Some people might say, well, what about it introduces Zod and it introduces the three Kryptonian criminals who come back for Superman 2. There's another way to do that. We don't need the entire Krypton prologue for that. We can figure out some other way to introduce them. But have Brando as Jor-El's ghost in the fortress. That's fine. Everything that we need to know about Krypton and about Superman and about Jor-El, we learn through that scene anyway. We don't need to spend 15 or 20 minutes with Jor-El on Krypton at the beginning of the movie. It's a waste of time. And if it were up to me, it wouldn't be there. But I understand the reasons why it is. And I mean, and I watch it. Like if I watch I'll watch it. And some of the visuals actually of like the bodies falling when Krypton is dying, like some of those visuals are really, really well done. But I mean, no. But again, it's all about, it depends on the story. Same thing with Thomas Wayne. Do I feel like I need to see Thomas Wayne alive in a Batman story, whether it's really him or like an alternate universe version of him? No. I mean, maybe this is conceited of me to say, maybe this is presumptuous, but I feel like if I was hired to write a Batman comic book, I could probably write that fucker for the rest of my life and never be stumped enough that I had to go, maybe I'll bring Thomas Wayne back. Like, there's plenty of stories to tell with these guys, right? I don't need to be going to Krypton or bringing his dead parents back to think of shit to tell about a Batman story or a Superman story. So, but again, it depends on the story. If the story makes it work, the story makes it work. And I'm happy for it. But all things being equal, I don't give a fuck about Krypton. And truthfully, I don't give a fuck about Bruce Wayne's parents because they're right where they belong too, in a fucking grave. That's where they need to be. Michael Shannon is fine as General Zod. I don't think it's anything that belongs on his highlight reel. I don't know if it's anything he would want to put on his highlight reel as an actor, but Michael Shannon's good in everything. Michael Shannon is a brilliant actor. I don't think he's one of those actors where, like, even if everything sucks around him, you're going, well, at least Michael Shannon's doing good. Michael Shannon is amazing. But I mean, is there anything that I find particularly special about his General Zod? Not really. No. The best things about Michael Shannon's General Zod are Michael Shannon. So, I mean, I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad you loved it, but it's not really my cup of tea, except for the fact that it's Michael Shannon. John Burns, if you get a chance to watch Lindsay Ellis's The Unforgivable Sin of Miss Rachel, please watch it. Okay, so there will be a bunch of stuff you already know, but the twist at the end is excellent. It's 2 hours, but it is worth it. I have not had a chance to watch it, but a lot of other people have recommended it. And of course, it's completely blown up. It's all over social media. Even the AV Club did an article about it, which I thought was pretty cool. They don't usually cover YouTube videos. So I will definitely try to make time to watch it this weekend, but I haven't seen it yet. And you are the first person to mention that there's a twist at the end. So now I'm really interested. The Not So Grumpy Monkey, just back from a lovely weekend in Iceland. Well, thank you thank you. Congratulations. I'm glad that you had a good time. Willkommen und Achtung, baby. First of all, I've been practicing on getting my fortnightly Ask Away diatribes down to 500 characters. Unfortunately, like a guy with a beard and a baseball cap sitting in a dark room, seemingly talking to himself about Star Trek. Things aren't looking good. Anywho, Alien 3. What do you think of it? I like it, and I don't understand why it gets the amount of hate it does. It had an impossible act to follow, given the 2 movies that preceded it, but one of the few things I find wrong with it is that they killed off Charles Dance's character far too soon. Another gripe I hear about it is that Hicks and Newt were killed off as well. This never bothered me because to take a leaf out of your book, they needed to die for the story to be told. I love to hear what you think of Alien 3. Alien Cubed? Finally, Inigo from The Princess Bride has been on my mind, given Trump's habit of threatening tariffs lately. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. Well, I do not think they work the way you say they work, maybe. Alien 3's fine. I'm not going to, work up a sweat defending it, but at the same time, I don't think it's like a terrible movie. I agree with you. I do think it has been some of the negativity directed towards it is over the top. And I think a lot of that is just due to the fact that it is kind of an unnecessary sequel to Aliens, and it came out like 10 years later, something like that. It was a belated sequel to Aliens. And it's just kind of like, oh, they did another one, like Aliens was a sequel to Alien, but it kind of, upped the ante and changed things around and did something a little different and kind of justified its existence. And so it didn't feel like, oh, they did another one, but Alien 3 kind of feels like, oh, they did another one, and like I say, it's not terrible. I don't really get a lot of the hate directed towards it. I think it's fine, but it is what it is. It's a fine, if superfluous, sequel to a movie that has now gotten several more sequels, some of which are not as good as Alien 3. So, and again, that's kind of how that goes too. Matthias, hi, Steve. Do you think Trump has definitively demonstrated how crazy the idea is that government should be run like companies to ensure efficiency and unnecessary expense? I'm not a businessman, but I'd imagine chief execs expect to rule their companies by edict and run very little via their board of directors. Similarly, Trump expects simply to be able to issue executive orders and have them followed to the letter by everybody, run practically nothing via his cabinet or Congress, and not be undermined by the other branches of government. I mean, I think it may be a useful object lesson, a useful example that you can point to and say, see, that's why you don't run government like a business. But has it, I don't think it's demonstrated it to any of the people that thought that to begin with. I think if you're dumb enough or misinformed enough, to put a kinder spin on it, to believe that a government should be run like a private business, I don't think anything Trump has done will persuade you that you were wrong, because you're a fucking dipshit to begin with. And you're probably not looking for reasons to change your mind. You're probably like, yeah, see, that's exactly what we've been saying. And you're probably swallowing Trump's lies about how great everything's going. You know, Trump will lie to your face and say everything's great when everything is fucking falling apart, because he doesn't care. He doesn't care. He just cares how he's perceived. So he'll tell you to your face, everything's great. It's a new golden age. It's never been better. Everything's great. He'll say that to your face. And if you're one of his goons, if you're one of his sycophants, that's all you need to hear. Glad to hear it, Mr. Trump. Great job. That's all you need. You don't care what the facts actually are. If you did, you wouldn't be supporting Donald Trump. So no, I don't think it's really definitively demonstrated it to people that thought that to begin with, but to people who, were already on the reasonable, rational side of that argument, it's hopefully provided a good example that you can show to other people and say, see, this is why we say you don't run government like a business, because this is how it fucking turns out. Yeah. 4/3, Mr. Shives, what hope have we? Each other. And the fact that while nothing good lasts forever, nothing bad lasts forever either. And, not to be too trite about it, but this too shall pass. That's the hope we have. Now, having said that, let's not be too passive about it. This too shall pass, but let's not wait around for it to pass. Let's do everything we can to help it along. As Martin Luther King once said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. And people have since added to that wonderful quote just for the sake of clarification. But we do have to bend it. So, but that is the hope that we have. That is the hope that we have. That as long as we are alive and we are capable of fighting, all is not lost. And things move in cycles. History moves in cycles. There have been bad times and there have been good times. And as surely as times are bad now, times will be good in the future. The trick is to survive the bad times and to make them last as briefly as possible. And that's where the work comes in. Neil, first of all, thank you for all of your content. Some of the best parts of my week. Oh, thank you. I love Strange New Worlds, but the special shows and ever-growing cast is not my favorite. The first season was breathtaking. Maybe my feelings are that of a dyed-in-the-wool Trekker from TNG, so I am not the modern audience that they're going for. Is there any chance that season 4 will revert back to episodes like those when the show started? I'm afraid that it may already be in the can. If not season 4, what's a good way to influence the producers for season 5? Thanks. P.S. Please stop piling on the Loaxana Troy was terrible thing. She gave a few of us square pegs real comfort. All of this has to be a question. Please change my first sentence to read, can you? I can, but I'm probably not going to. I'm glad that you found some comfort or some value in the character of Loaxana Troy. I find her detestable. And you'd be surprised how often I hold back on that. I could go off for hours on how much I fucking hate that character. I fucking hate that character. I find her utterly loathsome. Utterly loathsome. So I'm already kind of holding back already. I don't feel like I can ratchet it back any further. But as for how can we, I don't know how to influence the producers. Use your voice, talk about it in social media. If they offer like public feedback, take advantage of that. If I guess maybe if you are the kind of person that goes to conventions and you feel like bothering the people who make the show with your opinion as a fan, maybe try that. But I don't know. I mean, this whole idea of the audience influencing the producers of the show is not really something that I am in favor of or recommend to begin with. Like, look, I'm with you. I think the first season of Strange New Worlds so far has been its best season. I thought the second season was also fantastic, but was, a bit of a step down in quality from season 1. I have not been a huge fan of season 3 so far. I haven't hated it, but it just hasn't. It feels like it's just kind of like they're just sort of coasting. It feels like there are multiple episodes, including the one from this week, that it feels like they just never get out of second gear, you know? Like they hit a certain plateau and then they're just like, we'll just ride this to the end. You know what I mean? So it's been kind of a frustrating show this year. But that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes with any show. You know, the writers and the producers and the actors and the artists, they make the show. And then we in the audience watch the show and we decide whether we think it's any good. And that's how that works. It's not our job to influence them. It's not our job to tell them what we want. They shouldn't care what we want. To put it bluntly, the people who, not just with Star Trek, with anything, the artist who makes the art should not give a fuck what the audience wants. Their only loyalty should be to the art. Now, again, obviously that's not always true. There are commercial things that they are obliged to consider, and that's a shame for the most part. Sometimes those can yield good results, but mostly I'm not in favor of those either. But ideally, an artist cares only about the story and, you know, and the contributions of their collaborators and, you know, all of that. But there's a line that separates the audience from the people that make the thing the audience is watching. And the audience's role is to watch it and then decide whether they like it or not. You can watch it and think it sucks. That's fine. I do that a lot. But it's not my job to try and influence the creators to do something different. You know, because I bought the ticket. You know what I mean? I'm in the seats. I'm watching. That's what I'm here for. You know? Yeah, I'm not really, you know, what's a good way to influence the producers? Just don't. It's not your job. Watch the show. And maybe it'll suck and maybe you'll be disappointed, but you know what? That won't be the end of the world. It won't be the first time a TV show has sucked. You'll be okay. And it won't be the first. And if this does happen to Strange New Worlds, if season 3 does turn out to, you know, have an underwhelming ending, and if season 4 isn't any better, if the show just is a complete downward slide and it goes from a great show to a shitty show by the end, that sucks. And I hope that doesn't happen. And that will be disappointing. But life will go on and I'll get over it. And I'll make some YouTube videos about it. And I'll make some jokes about it. And hopefully I'll have something interesting to say about it. And maybe other people who are smarter and more thoughtful than me will have something interesting and educational and thoughtful to say about it. You know, and it'll contribute to the discourse and it'll become part of the conversation that us Star Trek fans have with each other. And eventually there will be another show, and maybe that one will be good or maybe that one will suck too. But that's how it goes. But it's not your job to tell the producers what kind of show they should be making. You know, let them fuck it up if that's what they want to do. Like it's not a call and response. They make the show. We watch the show. Simon Moody. I know Republicans have depowered governors during the lame duck when Dems have won, but I see no real option but for the Dems to willingly depower the presidency while holding office, assuming we see a non-authoritarian administration in the near future. Genuine penalties for illegal orders and acts, and regulations that require the DOJ to go after such a president. This may even require the formation of some small oversight body to monitor if a president is taking illegal action. Now, none of that would be easy, and I am not holding my breath for any of that to happen, but it should. Trump has, in essence, ruined the presidency as it has been known till now. A president cannot be given the assumption that they will act legally or within the rules going forwards. Thoughts? I have no problem with any of that. I support all of those things. Not just to rein in Trump, but I mean, look, the things that Trump is doing and the things that presumably future presidents would be prevented from doing by the reforms that you're describing here are things that the president shouldn't be doing anyway. So, yeah, why shouldn't we codify that? You know, I have no problem with that at all. Yes, of course the president should be reined in. Of course the president should be reined in. I don't think the office should be completely neutered, because I do think the president needs to have a certain amount of power to function within the government. But there do need, yes, the kinds of beefed up oversights and checks and balances that you're describing, I have no problem with those at all. And, you know, if a president follows the law and executes the office in the, you know, within the lines that have been prescribed, then they don't have anything to worry about, do they? Danny K. Hi, Steve. I was engaged in a lively discussion about Enterprise recently with some friends. We discussed how it aged, what its best moments were, what its worst moments were, and what were some missed opportunities to tell interesting stories. On the last topic, I brought up the Klingon Duras and how he died attacking the Enterprise at the end of Season 2 as it was moving into the Delphic Expanse when his ship was destroyed. Instead of going that route, I thought it would have been better for Duras to chase the Enterprise into the Expanse. At the very least, it would have made Captain Archer's mission more perilous knowing what the ops were in there with him. What are some things that you think could have been done with the scenario instead of the one we got? Thanks, hope all is well. I have no problem with I didn't give a fuck about that version of Duras. I'm fine with the fact that they killed him. I don't know if having Klingons chasing Enterprise during that story arc would have made that story arc any better. Like I feel like the things that I liked about it, I still would have liked, and the things I didn't like about it, I still would have not liked. I really don't see how, and again, we're speaking hypothetically, you know, so take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt, but I mean, I was completely fine with them killing off Duras on their way into the Delphic Expanse. I mean, look, the real Duras, the original Duras from TNG that Duras was named after, was created as like an ancestor of. I mean, he was only in, 2 episodes of TNG, and then Worf murdered the fuck out of him. So let's not act like, oh no, they named him after Duras and now he's dead. Like, okay, well, that's what Durases do. They get fucking killed by the hero. So he did his job, right? He was there to get killed by the hero, and that's what he did. Good for him. I don't have a problem with that at all. I don't really have any rewrites to pitch you there. JDC, hey Steve, hope you're doing well. Following a bit of minor surgery 7 days before this live stream, I finally, after meaning to get around to it for 25 years, have watched Alien and Alien. Some alien-related questions this time. That's cool. I guess because of the new show. Have you seen them? Any thoughts to share on that franchise? The scariest monsters are the ones seeking profits. Cheers, everybody. Yeah, I mean, especially the first two are classics. I mean, I think my favorite is still the original, Alien, although the James Cameron one, Aliens, is also fantastic. A very different movie, much more of like an action-oriented movie than the first one, but they're both great. They're both great. And some of the subsequent ones have been good as well. I'm one of the few people that doesn't think Prometheus is terrible. I mean, I don't think it's like a masterpiece, but I don't think it's like the bomb that a lot of people thought it was. And the one that just came out earlier this year, or maybe last year, Alien Romulus, it was fine. It felt a lot like, let's just do Alien again. You know, like there were some really well done suspense sequences in it, and it was really well shot, and I liked some of the characters. But it really felt like, oh, let's just do Alien again, you know, with a few twists. So, I mean, it was good. I don't know how necessary it was, but it was good. But no, the first two are great. The Alien and Aliens are, and you mentioned it in your question, the scariest monsters are the ones seeking profits. I really like that there is that sort of, you know, that social critique, that critique of, you know, capitalism run amok that is in there. And it's not foregrounded. It's not like the main thing those movies are about, but it's there as a commentary and as like, it is relevant to the action. Like it's not just something that's kind of happening disconnected in the background. It's relevant to the action, even if it's not the main point. And I really, really appreciate that. Don Quixote with a double header here, because Don Quixote is also a member and a patron. Hi, Steve. How do you feel about Texas redistricting to add representatives and California's response? It seems to me that if both are successful, more states will follow suit, and we'll have a House of Representatives with, going by the 5 extra per state, nearly 750 members. In my opinion, some of the less densely populated states are already overrepresented. Okay, that's a misunderstanding of what is happening. The total number of representatives in the House is not changing. The redistricting will just make it more likely that Republicans in Texas will win those seats. So when they say Texas is adding 5 seats, what they mean is Texas is adding 5 seats to the Republican caucus from Texas and taking them away from the Democrats through redistricting to redraw the map lines so that the districts are based on voter registration. The districts are majority Republican rather than Democrat. So it will be more difficult for Democrats to win elections in those districts. So the total number of members of the House is still going to be 435. It will, like, an act of Congress has to change that. A state can't decide by itself. It would take an act of Congress to add to the size of the House. So that's not what's happening. It's just they're shifting things around according to the party. And here's the next one from Don Quixote. While watching your review of Star Trek TNG, The Nth Degree, I felt you had a fondness for the Barclay character. He's an interesting addition to the crew, and he doesn't show up too often to become tiresome. He was in 6 episodes of Voyager, and I just wondered if you thought he made those episodes more palatable. No, I felt bad for him. I felt bad that he was being attached to Voyager as a beloved TNG leftover in an attempt to trick people into liking that show. I mean, Barclay is fine in those episodes, but none of those episodes is all that great. And I think probably the best one to feature Barclay is the Pathfinder episode, which is the one where they finally are able to make contact with the Alpha Quadrant for the first time since they've been lost in the other side of the galaxy. That's a decent episode, and there's a lot of Barclay in that. But really, I mean, honestly, the best part of that episode is the scene at the end when you see the reaction from Captain Janeway when she hears a voice from home for the first time. And Captain Janeway is not really, I mean, the Voyager crew is barely in that episode. And it kind of is like, oh, so I feel an emotional reaction when the episode shows me a meaningful moment in the lives of the characters that theoretically the show is about, even though I've just spent most of this episode focused on characters from a completely different show who this series is not about and are purely here as a ploy to try and get people to watch or to get people to kind of transfer their affection from the old show to the new show. So, I mean, no, just having Barclay there doesn't make those episodes more palatable. No. And look, and you're right. I do like Barclay. I like Barclay a lot. I made an entire video about why I like Barclay. I think he's a great character, and a very relatable character. But I mean, there are characters in Star Trek that I like a lot more than him. And if one of them had shown up on Voyager, it wouldn't have made, I mean, like if fucking Captain Sisko, maybe my favorite Star Trek character ever, if Captain Sisko had shown up on Voyager, I wouldn't have gone, oh, yay, Captain Sisko's here. This show will be better now. I would have gone, oh, no. Captain Sisko has been dragged into this vortex of garbage now, too. Oh, no. So, no, it didn't really make Voyager any better for me. Isaiah Taylor. I just got back from Star Trek Orlando and had a blast. Met some incredibly cool fans and people. And here is that photo that I teased you with earlier. That is Isaiah's haul from the con. That's an autographed picture of him and Sirach Lofton. I love that picture. And also an autographed picture to him from the wonderful Gates McFadden, and also a autographed, is that a CD? Is that like an album of Christina Chong's? But yeah, pretty cool. Looks like a good haul. I also connected with CL, that's Sirach Lofton from DS9, about being the son of a black single father of a sci-fi show back in the 90s, and he was really touched by that. I know you're not a con fan, but why? Just asking. Thanks. So blessed to meet Gates and Sirach. Just not my thing, man. I am not interested in meeting famous people like that. That just doesn't have any appeal to me. I'm so happy that you got to meet people from your favorite show and that it meant something to you and that you'll take that memory with you. And that's, again, that photo of you and Ciroc looks awesome. I'm just not interested in that. I'm just not interested in, like, but wouldn't you love to meet Jonathan Frakes? Wouldn't you love to meet, LeVar Burton? Or, yes, of course, but not because I paid $50 and waited in line and I was like, person number 500 that day. Like, there's just something, and again, I don't want to, I hate talking about this because I don't want to shit on anybody else's good time. Like, people go to cons and they meet people under those circumstances and it means a lot to them, and that's great. And I don't want to say, well, you shouldn't feel good about it, it's all phony. Like, I'm just saying, to me, that doesn't have any appeal. That's not what I'm after. You know what I mean? And also, like, I don't really feel any great urge to meet Jonathan Frakes. I'm sorry. I'm a big fan of his. I love his work. He seems like a really cool guy in real life. If I had led a different life and he and I had gotten to work together in something, I'm sure it would have been great. And I would have treasured it, And hell, if we wind up sitting next to each other on a train someday and we strike up a conversation, holy shit, I got to sit next to Jonathan Frakes on the train and we talked for half an hour about whatever the fuck. That sounds great. But, meeting him at a con, like, that just doesn't appeal to me. I'm sorry. I just don't find that interesting. But I'm very glad that you do. And I'm very glad that you had a good time and that you met Ciroc Lofton and that he was really cool. I'm really happy for you there. Brian Baker, Steve, I probably won't be at the live show, but I wanted to put forth a question for you about insurance and medical care. I'm 60 and my father worked at a major manufacturing company that provided employees with health insurance for them and their families. When I was 18 in 1983, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and because I was on my father's insurance, I was covered until I graduated from college. I could not find a job in my career field because of my medical history and couldn't get any insurance to cover the cancer diagnosis. Why in the fuck is the United States of America not providing health insurance to all citizens? And how do liberals make this an issue for future elections? I have insurance now, and I am completely covered by that insurance, but why do so many people have no coverage and no chance of getting coverage in the U.S.? Because insurance is a money-making endeavor. Happiness is health, and the pursuit of life would include socialized medicine. Thanks. I mean, first, the way liberals make it an issue for future elections is the liberals who support universal health care need to tell the other liberals who are mealy-mouthed about it or coming up with excuses to why we can't have it to sit the fuck down and sit this one out, because nobody wants to hear from them. Americans have been told for decades about all kinds of things. About healthcare, about gun control, which we've just had a horrible reminder of recently, about all kinds of other things that other countries have, if not solved, at least managed much more effectively than we have. Right? No other country has completely solved these problems, but they have, they don't deal with them nearly to the extent that we do. So we need to tell people who stand in the way of these reforms, and that's both politicians and voters and lobbyists and donors and everything, that we are no longer going to accept being told that we are asking for too much when we ask that people have access to affordable health care, that people are not forced to choose between keeping a roof over their head and having a necessary medical treatment or getting medicine that they need to not die. That we are no longer going to accept, well, you can be healthy and stay alive as long as you can afford it. We're no longer going to accept that. Not only because we don't have to and it's morally repugnant, but also because most of the rest of the world isn't asked to accept that. And if we're the United States and we're supposedly the greatest country in the entire fucking world, how is it that we're the ones who are asked by our superiors, by our leaders, by our representatives? We're the ones who are told, oh, universal health care, you're asking for too much. How comes we're the ones that are told that? you know? We can be a world leader in everything else, but oh, sorry, not that. No, we can't do that. We're America. We can do anything we put our mind to. We're the greatest country ever. We can do anything. We're the world leader. Oh, no, not universal health care. No, we can't do that. Sorry. No, we can't do that. You're asking for too much. Sorry. Fuck that. That needs to be the first part of that conversation. Fuck that. The conversation is no longer going to be, can we do this? The conversation is going to be, how are we doing this? That's what the argument's going to be. We're going to do this. This is going to happen. We're no longer going to have for-profit healthcare. We're no longer going to have a system where if you can't afford it, then you don't get what you need, or you can get what you need, but you have to go into debt for the rest of your fucking life. We're not doing that anymore. So the only question is, how are we going to do this? There's lots of different options. There's lots of different things we could do. There's lots of different models we can draw inspiration from all around the world. There are many countries that have many different forms of socialized medicine. So how are we going to do it? That's the question. Not are we going to do it? That needs to be completely off the table. And if the private insurance industry has a problem with it, the correct answer is go fuck yourself. You're not a part of this. That's what has to happen. Now, is that going to happen anytime soon? Christ, I fucking hope so. Glenn H. is trying unique ways to get to 500 characters. Keep going. You're going to get there. I know it. Greetings, Steve. I'm writing to petition that you do a retro review on one of my favorite TNG episodes, Season 2's peak performance. I think the best part of the episode is not the also very good A story about Riker and the Hathaway, all that Klingon guile, but Data's B story about trying to beat the Stratagema Master. I've always loved Picard's line that sometimes one can make a mistake and still lose. That is not a weakness. That is life. And I appreciated Data's strategy in trying not to win, but to maintain a tie, which is more frustrating for Kolrami and forces him to quit. I felt that in our competitive only winners matter world, this episode has great life lessons that I took to heart and shared with my kids. I'd love to hear your thoughts either here or in a formal review. Thanks and have a great show. I can't tell you for sure off the top of my head, but I think that episode might be scheduled for next year in the retro reviews. But again, don't hold me to that. I'm not positive that that's the case, but I feel like that is on my schedule at some point in the nearish future because I do schedule those retro reviews pretty far out. No, I really like that episode. I mean, that's season 2. And I mean, I did a video earlier this year about how season 2 is a lot better than its reputation suggests. I mean, I really like a lot of TNG season 2, and Peak Performance is a really strong episode. I agree. I love the Riker versus Picard War Games stuff. I love the Data story. It's a really, really good episode. I agree with you completely. I mean, I'll get into it in more detail when I do the review at some point. But for now, no, I agree with you. I think that's a really, really good episode. It's one of the stronger episodes from season 2, which is a stronger season than a lot of people give it credit for, I think. Air 1, I start fires. Hi, Steve. Do you like the 1953 War of the Worlds? I thought it was all right. We see a little societal collapse in the last 15 minutes, but before that, it's scientists casually studying a piece of Martian technology. Thousands of people calmly watching as they drop the A-bomb. All while the Martians are supposedly going rampant around the world. I feel like the blood feeding is a crucial part of the story, but it's not there. I prefer the 2005 version. What do you think? No, I really like the 1953 War of the Worlds. You have to understand, 1950s era pulp sci-fi is one of my very favorite genres of anything. I love 1950s pulp sci-fi. I love like space movies. I love creature features. I love 1950s like sci-fi, horror, that kind of thing. And War of the Worlds is right down the middle for me. It's right up my alley, you know? I really, really like it a lot. I like the aesthetic of it. I like the design of the alien craft, the periscope thing that they have. And the special effects and the matte paintings. And man, that final sequence where, and also let us never forget, as a Mystery Science Theater fan, that's where Dr. Clayton Forrester gets his name from. The evil Dr. Forrester is named after the hero of that War of the Worlds movie. And I mean, those sequences near the end where Dr. Forrester is running through the streets of the devastated city looking for his love interest. I mean, that's just that's fucking great cinema there, man. I mean, the environment that they create with the sound design and the lighting and, you know, the explosions and the smoke and the purple sky and everything kind of happening in the background and those wider shots and those, you know, Martian spacecraft hovering around destroying shit. It's just incredibly well done. So I really, really like the 53 War of the Worlds. And I mean, the other thing that you need to realize, and again, I mean, if you don't like it, you don't like it. Like, that's completely fine. But one of the things that makes War of the Worlds specifically special is that in pretty much every version of it, it is a limited perspective story. You know, yes, it is Martians taking over the whole world, but that story is told through a relatively limited perspective. It's on the ground in one particular place. In the original H.G. Wells novel, I think it's around the town of Woking, I think, is where most of the action takes place. In the George Powell's produced 1953 movie, it's you know, Southern California. It's like a small town outside of Los Angeles, and then eventually Los Angeles itself. In the Orson Welles radio drama, the Mercury Theater version from 1938, it's in, you know, rural New Jersey where they land, and the focus is on that area. And yes, we're told, and in the, you know, we're through montage, we're shown in the 53 version, we're shown that, you know, they're attacking other cities in the world, but the focus is on that local area that we spend most of the movie in. And that's just part of the nature of how that story is told. So I don't really expect, you know, I don't feel cheated. Like, why don't we see more of what's happening in Rome? Why don't we see more of what's happening in, you know, Japan or whatever? That's not how that's not the story. The story is global thing happening, but told through a very narrowly focused lens. And that's why, like, I don't have as big of a problem with the concept of that new War of the Worlds as a lot of people do. The fucking Amazon version, the Screen Life version with Ice Cube. I mean, that's a terrible movie, but it's not a terrible movie because of the format. I mean, there are, you know, you can argue over whether or not like a Screen Life movie is a good thing or not, but I see why somebody would have had the idea to try to do a War of the Worlds movie in that format, because the story traditionally has been told it through a limited lens where you're only seeing a certain specific part of the story. So the idea of telling it through a Screen Life movie where everything we see is, you know, from the desktop of this character, I can sort of see where they're coming from there. It makes sense for that story. Now, the execution is terrible, and the acting is terrible, and the obnoxious fucking Amazon product placement is terrible, and the writing is terrible and hackneyed and derivative and predictable, and every like the execution is utterly shitty. But the idea, there might be something there. Like, I see where they were going with it. They just completely botched it. Joe McClory, your video on PDFs got me thinking about how much I hate that term for what it has come to mean, how much it obscures the real problem and makes it harder for people who have the true condition to receive treatment to help them from wanting to harm children. Honestly, I don't think Trump is attracted to children. I think he is an insecure old man in a place of power, victimizing the vulnerable, getting off on the power trip. A sad, weak man who can only feel strong by lording power over others. And that does not magically get to be okay when a person turns 18. It is worse when these people do things to children, but that is just a measure of scale, another thing added to the power imbalance. The term we use obfuscates that and kind of gives an excuse to predators looking to harm less difficult victims, not because they are more attracted to younger people, but because they are more valuable, easy targets. Not really a question, I guess. What are your thoughts on this after sharing my rant? Well, I mean, I guess it's sort of, it's what happens when we speak casually and informally about a subject that demands a certain amount of nuance, right? Because if you if you use the word pedophile to describe anyone who harms a child in that way, whether or not they have like the psychological compulsion to do that, you are in a sense doing a disservice because you're misusing the term from its most proper technical meaning. But you're using it in that way because everybody immediately knows what you mean. And everybody immediately makes the association that you want them to make, which is this behavior, this practice is unacceptable, is revolting, is repugnant, is, unacceptable in every possible circumstance. And that word has been attached to that, and that's the word that most people associate with it. So that's the word you use. And yes, technically, it is not the proper word in every circumstance, because not everybody who rapes a child is technically a pedophile psychologically. I think you're right about that. But I guess it's a matter of place and time. You know, if you're just having an informal, casual conversation, you might not have the opportunity or the desire to go through, a precise technical definition of, what it is and what you're saying and what you're not saying. You might just want to get your point across in as direct a way as possible, you know. So I think a lot of it is that, and a lot of it is also people intentionally misusing the word, using the word maliciously to as an insult as opposed to, a description, and that certainly hasn't helped either, I'm sure. Yeah. Captain Sass. During the Ask Away on July the 4th, discussion naturally turned to the revolution and how your heroes rebelled against the tyrant King George III. But being from the UK, this niggled me because we are taught that after the English Civil War and the rule of the great protector Oliver Cromwell, when the monarchy was brought back, it was by consent of Parliament, and they were just a figurehead and have been ever since. Also, we were taught that Farmer George was, despite mental health issues, a benevolent ruler and made many reforms, including how the crown estate is managed and many changes to how farms were run, while it was in fact Lord Frederick North, who was PM at the time, who really lost the colonies. So my question is, what do you think of these contradictions? I'm an American. I don't think anything of those contradictions. Because those contradictions are not a part of the history I was taught. The finer points of British government at the time were not included in my high school history lessons about the American Revolution, nor, I believe, were they even included in my college studies of American history. Now, I'm sure if I studied at a higher level, if I got like a master's degree or a PhD in American history, I'm sure I would have learned those finer details that you refer to. But as a typical American student, my education did not include such, fine detail about the reign of King George III and what parts of what we would call tyranny he was responsible for versus what parts were Parliament and the Prime Minister responsible for. So, I mean, honestly, I don't really think anything about it. I think it's kind of typical that we Americans would have simplified the history and, allowed ourselves for many generations to just view King George as a simplified tyrant that we had no choice but to overthrow. I mean, it kind of sounds like us. Kara the Token Nerd. Hi, Steve. Having watched DS9 both with you and Dana and on terrestrial TV here in the UK, I've been considering the Ferengi. Do you think that of all the series, DS9 doesn't just redeem the Ferengi, but actually makes a more rounded species? Would be interested to hear your thoughts. Kara. Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to put it. They definitely make, well, because there are the way you do a species in a Star Trek show is you don't worry about the species, you worry about the individuals. Like, you don't create the Ferengi, you create characters, individuals who are Ferengi, and then you develop them as people. And then you decide how them being a Ferengi and how them coming from that particular culture affects them as characters. And when you're doing that, you make up whatever parts of their culture you need to while you're doing it. And that's, yeah. And there are a ton of really great Ferengi characters on Deep Space Nine. You know, there's Quark and Rom and Nog. Those are the big ones, but there's also the Grand Nagus. There's also Moogie. There's also Liquidator Brunt. Like, there are so many just fascinating Ferengi characters who are all different from each other. You know, they're all funny in certain way, but they're funny in different ways. And they have different personalities, and they have different outlooks on life and different priorities, and they're played by very different actors who bring different qualities to the characters. And you know, that's why they're so good in Deep Space Nine. That's why most of the characters in Deep Space Nine are so good, because they're created and brought to life as individuals, not as Ferengi. You know, even though obviously the fact that they are Ferengi means something to their characterizations. But I mean, Quark is Quark. He's not a Ferengi named Quark. If he was just a Ferengi named Quark, he wouldn't be nearly as interesting. So yes, I do. But the collection of that, the accumulation of that, is that yes, it does give us the impression that we are getting a more full-rounded view of the Ferengi as a species, because we have met so many unique and interesting individuals from that species throughout the course of the show. Sia Mac, who is signing off from work early on this beautiful August day, then sitting inside to watch a stream. Yeah, buddy. Yeah. Greetings, Steve. I do hope you're well, and I did, in fact, spend some time outside this afternoon. That's good. But the shit show continues. We've officially reached bread and circuses. What with a UFC match slated for the White House lawn next July 4th, Epstein Files. There's been a military takeover of D.C. and capitulation by Bowser, Epstein Files. Chicago is slated to be next. Pritzker, Waltz, and Newsom are doing a good job, in my view, of trying to stand up Epstein Files, which... why is no one talking about the $200 million ballroom being obvious money laundering? Epstein Files. What do you think of all this, Steve? Epstein Files. I think you have a tremendous written impersonation of Kevin Nealon's subliminal commentary character from Saturday Night Live. I think that's what's going on there. No, I agree with you. Yeah, bread and circuses is the perfect way to put it. That's exactly what it is. And it's a circus. It's a shit show. It's embarrassing. If it were not imperiling our democracy so greatly, it would be hilarious, because it's so cheesy and chintzy and low rent and low rate. And yeah, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. Epstein Files. Anti-Pope Donculus I. Bless you, my child. Why not? It don't cost a dime. I don't understand the uproar over the redesigned Cracker Barrel logo. Is the problem that a typical Cracker Barrel customer won't be able to identify the restaurant if the logo doesn't have a picture of both a cracker and a barrel? I guess, yeah, they can't read. They can't read, and they can't remember Cracker Barrel is the big yellow one. Maybe that's the problem. I don't know. I thought the new logo looked completely fine. And now they're like, oh, sorry. And they're going back to the old one. Okay. I mean, do whatever you want to do, Cracker Barrel. I don't give a fuck. Do people actually, that's the most fathomable part to me. That's the part that makes it seem the most like just completely, pardon the expression, trumped up controversy. I have a very hard time believing anybody actually cared about this. The people who were making a big deal about it online, oh, it's like somehow it's woke. Like, the term woke means nothing to these people. Woke is things they don't like. Oh, they're changing the Cracker Barrel logo. It's woke. I cannot fathom for the life of me why anybody should give a single shit what the logo design of a restaurant is. Like, unless it's like something overtly offensive, unless it's like, you know, a racist caricature or something like that. Why do I give a fuck? I don't give a fuck. And I mean, it's not just like the fucking disingenuous, bad faith, like culture warrior type people who stirred up this hornet's nest either. A lot of people, sort of as a part of this conversation, I saw people posting on Twitter saying, well, you know, like the people who are mad about the Cracker Barrel logo are full of shit, and they're just, you know, they're mad about nothing. But it is a deeply concerning trend the Cracker Barrel logo change because it represents the ongoing trend of corporate minimalism. And they showed the examples of like Burger King changing its logo to a more minimalistic logo, and other companies, sort of changing from a more visually kind of complex logo to a more simplified logo. And I'm sorry, I cannot imagine why I should give a shit about any of that. I don't understand why a more visually minimalist logo is necessarily bad. Just from a design point of view, I don't understand why it's like automatically something, even if I was interested in like the visual design of the logos. I don't understand why a more minimalist design is necessarily a bad thing. And even beyond that, I don't understand why I should give a fuck in the first place. Like, if I go to Burger King because I like the food, why do I care what the logo looks like? You know, if I go shopping at a particular store or eating at a particular restaurant or whatever, again, as long as it's not something like offensive, like it's not something racist or whatever, why do I give a fuck about the logo? Does anybody give a fuck about the logo? All the logo needs to be is recognizable. So when I see it, I think of the thing it's associated with. That's it. Like, so have a guy next to a Cracker Barrel on the Cracker Barrel logo, or don't. I don't give a fuck. And I have a very hard time believing anybody else truly in their heart of hearts gives a fuck about it either. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about that. MW Ridra, hey Steve, are you psychic or something? Literally the day after, if Republicans said the quiet part's loud about Gavin Newsom, I received a flyer from the California Republicans about how gerrymandering's bad no matter who does it, and Gavin Newsom is trying to undermine democracy. Just, wow. It's not like I even necessarily disagree with them, but also, shut the fuck up. I'm sure these people were equally upset when Texas did it. The whole reason we're trying to do it in the first place. It just seems like the GOP keep wanting to fight a war, but like the Israel definition of war, where you keep doing war crimes and then cry about it when the other side gives you back like 1% of the same shit you dished out. P.S. I just started watching Blue-Eyed Samurai on Netflix, and holy shit, why did no one tell me how good this show is? I'm only a few episodes in, but don't have a single complaint so far. Have you seen it? Very good samurai anime with a bunch of not so subtle leftism. I have never seen it or even heard of it, but I will make a note to check it out. Thank you for the recommendation. Yeah, I mean, no, I'm not psychic. It's just that they're incredibly predictable. They're incredibly predictable. And of course, their reaction to the California attempt to gerrymander is going to be rank hypocrisy. They're going to say, we should be allowed to do it in Texas. It's good to do it in Texas. We're doing it in Texas to give a voice to the people. And then they're going to turn right around and say, well, they're doing it in California because they want to take away the voice of the people. That's not right. Because they're hypocrites. And because, as I say, as that character in that, if Republicans said the quiet part's loud video, they don't give a fuck. Like, we'll make an argument. We'll live by that double standard. We don't give a fuck. So no, it's just, yeah, it's just obviously that's what they were going to do. It doesn't surprise me at all. Jan, happy end of summer. Enjoy barbecue and family, friends, etc. But try to remember this holiday is Labor Day and take a moment to honor all who labor. I could not agree more. American Labor Day kind of gets a bum rap, and deservedly so, because it has really been co-opted by people who are not super supportive of labor. But originally, our Labor Day was very much a day to celebrate labor unions and organized labor. Like, that was the original idea of it. It has drifted away from that. It has been pulled away from that. But that was the original idea. And that's what we should be remembering on Labor Day, that it is a day to honor the people who actually make our entire country and our entire economy possible. And that is the people that do the work. Yeah. So, and yeah, enjoy the cookout, enjoy the barbecue, but remember that as well. The Casual Collector. So have you ever thought about digitizing your physical media or music collection? Apparently you can rip your own and Blu-ray to make sort of your Netflix type service. P.S. What did you think of this week's Strange New Worlds episode? I loved the Vulcan jokes and the extra blooper reel at the end. Bonus points for the alternate intro. I've never really seriously thought about digitizing my physical media account or physical media collection. Like, it's not that big of a deal to me to get up from the couch and take a DVD or a Blu-ray off the shelf and put it in the player. Like, I've never seriously thought about that. I mean, like a lot of other Strange New Worlds episodes this season, I thought it started out promising and it had some really good bits, and then it just kind of circled the drain. You know, there were some really funny parts. I thought Patton Oswalt was funny, even though for most of the episode it seemed like they had no idea what to do with him, other than they created a potentially funny character for him and then just kind of let him be there and not do anything. And he has some funny lines and some funny bits, but like, okay, you know, and it didn't really have it didn't really have an ending, you know. Like I said earlier, it feels like a lot of episodes this season, they start out with a really strong concept and they just don't go anywhere with it, or they don't know where to go with it, or they go a certain distance and then they just kind of stop. And it feels like, you know, it feels like a very underwritten season. And I know some people have speculated that maybe that has to do with the fact that they went into production right after the strike ended, and that maybe they were in such a hurry just to get the show back on its feet that they didn't spend as much time working over the scripts as they normally would have. And they kind of, you know, it feels underwritten because it is. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I know that's how it feels. And this episode was no exception. I didn't think it was terrible, but you know, I mean, I liked it better than last week's episode. It didn't leave a bad taste in my mouth after after the ending of last week's episode. I thought last week's episode really almost pissed me off with the ending, with the, you know, asking all of these really pertinent questions about like the nature of the Federation and Starfleet, and is it an empire or is it not, and what's the difference? And then they ended with, well, it's not an empire because we're all a family and we love each other and we're good people. Give me a fucking break. Be serious. Like, if you're not going to answer the question or at least try to deal with it meaningfully, then don't even ask. Don't even raise the question. Right? So that episode kind of pissed me off. But this episode, it was fine. The blooper reel at the end, it's not even a blooper. It's not a blooper reel. It's an Easter egg, or not. It's not even an Easter egg. It's like a credit cookie. You know, it's just extra bits with Spock and the Patton Oswalt character. It was really funny. I liked it a lot. It was really, really funny. The thing I didn't like about it was that it was so much funnier than anything in the actual episode. And there were some bits in the actual episode that I thought were funny, don't get me wrong. But like the post-credit scene shouldn't, if you're making a funny episode or a funny movie or whatever, you're making a funny thing, your post-credit scene should not be funnier than anything in the actual episode. That's just kind of a rule for me. I don't know. But yeah, I didn't love it, but it was fine, I guess. And 2 from Russell, and then we're done. So Russell, number 1. Hey, Steve, I've been reading up on the shooting in Minnesota and have been reading the comments left behind by people who turned the comments page into a political war. And I'm thinking the first thought I had when I read this was, my thoughts are with the families of those murdered children, to the wounded people and their loved ones. I'm trying my best to phrase the question without seeming like I don't care about politics. Has society forgotten basic human compassion? I really hope you take my meaning with this question. Thank you. I mean, I think that there are people who are always going to instinctively find the political angle in a story like that, just because that's the world we live in. And to a certain extent, I get it. Because, I mean, there are going to be bad actors who are going to seize upon an event like this to try and use it to, you know, as an excuse to do something horrible. Like already, you know, as a result of the Annunciation shooting, I saw a Republican member of the Minnesota State House saying that they need to repeal the trans sanctuary law. So that's what we're up against. You know, one who appears to be a trans person, the shooter of the Minnesota, they appear to have been a trans person. Although I don't think the fact that they were trans reflects poorly on trans people as a group at all. And, this what makes two trans people who have been guilty of mass shootings in the last 2 or 3 years out of the hundreds of mass shootings that have been committed in this country. We now have two since 2023. We now have two that have been done by trans people. Oh shit! Time to repeal one of the only laws protecting trans people in the country, I guess. So that there are people that are going to use this tragedy for that. So how can we not jump in on the other side? How can we allow them to control the conversation? And yes, it seems ghoulish, and yes, it seems disrespectful of the victims and their families. In a perfect world, we would give the victims and their families top priority, and we wouldn't turn this issue into a political football. But in a better world, we wouldn't have to, because there wouldn't be fucking ghouls on the other side trying to use this as an excuse to take rights away from people who already have had their rights yanked away from them to an unacceptable degree. So I mean, yes, of course I feel horrible for the families of this, and we all should. We all should. But I am also very concerned about the trans people in this country who are once again being targeted and vilified as a result of this by people who mean them harm and are only too willing to walk over the corpses of these poor children to do it. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but at the same time, I don't know if, I don't know. And then Russell with another question. Hey, Steve, me again. Another question I got was voting in your recent polls. The day I got the alert, one hopefully as a member and a patron. That is okay. I mean, yeah, that's fine. If you wanted to vote in the poll twice as a patron, and I guess that's fine. But also I noticed I submitted my vote that you were in round 3. Keep in mind, this was the day of the notification. Just curious on how the poll voting works. Lastly, not a question, since I know at some point you will do this review, so you are keeping your opinions to yourself at this point. May I point out my view on the subject is odd number of Star Trek bad or a curse? I am going off memory here. Simply put, no. I actually really enjoy Search for Spock and Insurrection. Also, I didn't hate Generations. There's problems with it. I can't wait for you to actually review this one. Finally, if I haven't said so before, thank you for all that you do and being one of the most consistent content creators. Well, thank you for saying nice things, my friend, and for your generosity. Well, no, I'll just say I agree with you. I don't think that there is an odd number Star Trek curse either. That will be the thesis of that video whenever I make it. And the third round thing, that's because it's the polls to determine upcoming Trek Actually topics are tabulated in a ranked choice voting method. So if you vote in it and then you go to the results page and it says, here are the results after 3 rounds, that just means that given the votes that it has received, it needed to go through 3 rounds of, the ranked choice system in order to find a majority winner. And actually I checked it earlier, and now it's up to 4 rounds. They have to tabulate votes 4 rounds out to find a majority winner. But that's just, you can vote at any time. It's not like if you vote now that it's not going to count for as much. Because the results change as new votes come in. But that's what the rounds thing means. All right, that is it for the patron and member questions. So I will turn my attention shortly to the live chat for the remainder of the show. And once again, we'll go a little bit past 8, or a little bit past the top of the hour. It's almost 8 here, just because it took so long to get through the patron and member questions. See, this is why I'm cutting the character limit. In about a month for Ask Away number 200, and I announced this last time, but for Ask Away 200, beginning with that, the character limit of the pre-submitted patron and member questions will be cut from 1,000 characters to 500 characters. And the main reason for that is that as much as I love getting the questions and I love answering the questions, and I do not want to discourage patrons and members from sending in questions at all, I do not want to be taking 2 hours to get through the questions every week. So I'm going to cut the character limit. So hopefully getting through the questions will not take nearly as long. But that's not quite coming up yet. That's coming up with Ask Away number 200, and this is but Ask Away number 196. So we have a few to go, but that will be the situation going forward. But anyway, before I turn to the live chat, it's time for a brand new Stuffy short. So this will go up live as a standalone YouTube short on this channel tomorrow. But because you have stuck with it this long, and because you are still watching this live stream and you have shown such patience and such good taste, if I may add, in doing so, you get to see the brand new Stuffy and Friends short right now before anybody else. So please do enjoy this brand new Stuffy and Friends short.
Oi, Stuffy, you're a trough of useless knowledge.
Do you mean font?
What the hell has typography got to do with it? Just answer my question.
What's the question?
An old mate of mine from Belfast called the other day, and I accidentally hit answer instead of ignore and was obliged to speak to him, and he wanted to know, when did America stop being a democracy?
Well, that's more complicated than it sounds. The process is still underway.
I see. He said we were turning into I can't remember what he said. What's the name for what Trump wants to turn the country into instead of a democracy?
Oh, that could be a lot of things too. A fascist state?
No.
An authoritarian regime?
No.
A dictatorship?
No.
What are we talking about?
What's the word for what Trump's turning the United States into instead of a democracy?
Oh, a totalitarian hellscape?
No.
Dystopian nightmare?
No.
Banana Republic?
No.
Global laughingstock?
No.
International embarrassment?
No.
North Korea with money?
No.
Russia with better weather?
No.
Iran for Christianity?
No.
Hungary with less attractive porn stars?
No. Hang on. What was the first one you said?
Fascist state?
Aye, that was it.
Glad I could help. Good old Stuffy. Good old Stuffy. All right, let me turn to the live chat, and of course I have to reboot my my chat viewer. Why wouldn't I? While I'm doing that, let me acknowledge some of the super chats that I have received while going through the patron and member questions. Thanks to everybody who sent in a super chat. And if you would like to be generous and send in a super chat from this point forward, that would, of course, be incredibly welcome. But here are the ones that I already did Kirox from the beginning. Here's one from John Burns. 500 character limit is less of an issue if you can write part 1 of 15, part 2 of 15, part 3 of 15, part 4. Yes, but you can't do that, John. At the maximum, you could do part 1 of 2 if you are a patron and a member. So you can't do part 1 and 2 of 15. Stephen G. Clenar with a super chat. Thank you, my friend. Steve, do not apologize for being unconventional. Okay, I won't. Thank you, my friend. And here's one from Dean, who says, will you be covering the new season of Strange New Worlds? Not episode by episode, but I am going to do a season sort of recap video when it's done. When the whole season is out, I'll do like, how was season 3 of Strange New Worlds video, but I'm not doing episode by episode reviews. And here is a member message from Don Quixote. Just a quick question. What are your thoughts on Trump giving military honors for Ashley Babbitt? Just a traitor giving honors to the same. That's exactly what I think. I think it's horseshit, and it's pandering to his base, which is virtually all he does. And here's a member message from Damian Williams. Thank you, my friend. So I have an update since my member question. My buddy will foster my cat until I get settled back home, then send her to me. Somewhat less shitty situation. I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you for sharing that, man. I'm glad that you won't have to part with your kitty permanently, because that sucks. That's definitely a punch in the gut to have to go through that, just that general situation, and also have to worry about, losing your pet as well. So I'm glad to hear that part of the situation is better. Barbara Kruger says, will there ever be more full-length episodes of Steve and Stuffy. Not Steve and Stuffy, because I agreed after my wife and I divorced, I agreed I wouldn't call it Steve and Stuffy anymore because she was a part of Steve and Stuffy. But Stuffy and Friends, the version of the show that exists now. Yeah, probably at some point. I mean, I occasionally do specials that are, sort of full length ish, like the Get Out the Vote one and the Christmas special that I did last year. And of course, every Thanksgiving, I'll still do the Riff specials, the Turkey Day specials that are much longer than the shorts. So yeah, I mean, I don't have an exact idea. I don't have a plan or a schedule right now, but yes, there will be Stuffy and Friends episodes other than the shorts in the future. Yes. Not cinematic length, HB Hagen. No, not cinematic length. Oh, Dana, you like that one? Hungry with less attractive porn stars? I'm glad you like that one. You missed it, Air One Fire. I answered it. Petrix says, thoughts on America devolving into a state akin as seen in 2024's Civil War. Great movie watch if you already haven't. Thinking of the final scenes of that movie. Boy, we're all thinking of the final scenes of that movie lately, my friend. Yes, we're all thinking of the final scenes of that movie. Oh, Some Random Geek. MST3K has an official YouTube channel. This I know. What old episode should I look for to see if it is up on the channel? I mean, I don't know if they have a lot of the classic episodes up on YouTube now, on the official channel. I mean, my all-time favorite is The Amazing Colossal Man. So I would recommend that. That's the episode that got me hooked on the show. That's the first episode I ever saw. Cave Dwellers is great. Obviously, Manos, The Hands of Fate is great. Space Mutiny, Teenage Strangler, The Brain That Wouldn't Die, which is Mike's first episode as host, Mitchell, which is Joel's last episode as host. You really can't go wrong. I mean, it's Mystery Science Theater. It's one of the best shows ever. But like my personal favorite, if you put a gun to my head and say, choose your favorite MST3K episode, I would probably say The Amazing Colossal Man. So I don't know if that's on the YouTube channel or not, but I would check it. Oh, Isaiah says, my favorite part of this episode is the discotheque chair that was made for Barkley. Yeah, I didn't mention that in my review, but I probably should have. That is a really cool design. The chair that Barkley, in the nth degree, we're talking about the TNG episode I reviewed yesterday for my retro reviews. Yeah, the chair that he sits in on the holodeck after he takes control of the computer, and it's got like the laser like zapping his head to connect his brain to the computer. It's a really, really cool design. I like it a lot. Super chat from Kirok 2011. My point with salamander babies was turning human was Janeway and Paris's offspring. What a twist for Voyager. Yeah. Again, I feel like my answer is still pretty much the same. Oh, Duralta Trekkie says, did the news cover the European politicians visiting Trump? What do you think about Friedrich Merz and Olaf Scholz? Were they better than Merkel? The news covered it, but I'll be honest, I really didn't pay attention. So I don't really know the details of the meeting, what they said or how they acted. I can't really tell you. Daryl Letts with a great question. I wish I had an answer. Okay, Steve, one question bothering me is how many parents of these children hurt or killed in school shootings own firearms themselves, and how many ever give the firearms up? I mean, I think if more people who own firearms were willing to give them up in the wake of events like this, we wouldn't have events like this nearly as often. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to put myself in the head of the parent of a child who was killed in such a horrific way. I don't know what they think. I don't know how it affects their view of their own firearms, if they have any. All I can tell you is if I had a child, First of all, we're taking a couple of big leaps here. But follow me on down this hypothetical trail, because there's a couple of big leaps. Two things that are never, ever, ever going to be true of me. But let's just say, hypothetically, I was a gun owner, which is never going to happen. And I was also a parent, which is also never going to happen. But let's say both of those things were true. And let's say, horror of horrors, one of my children is killed in a school shooting. I cannot imagine wanting to have a gun in my house 1 second longer after that. Like, it is unfathomable to me. But apparently it's fathomable to some people. I don't get it. I don't get it. Duncan Morris. Hi, Steve. I work with a kid who loves Jurassic Park, so I'm watching the franchise all the way through. It's fine, but I'm on Camp Cretaceous, and it's the best thing so far. Given that Prodigy is a strong entry in an otherwise hit and miss bunch of shows, do you have a theory as to why shows aimed at kids seem to end up being so strong? Clone Wars is similarly respected, I believe. I mean, I can't speak to Clone Wars because I never watched it, but I know that a lot of people feel similarly about it. You know, I talked about this a little bit in my video about Prodigy. I think part of it is that because you know that you are making the show for a young audience, and you are presuming, because you're aiming the show at kids, and it's a Star Trek show in this case, you're presuming that they haven't seen any of the other stuff. So you need to make a show that will be not just, you know, sensible to that audience, where they'll be able to tell what's going on without having watched the previous 60 years of shit, but interesting. Like, it has to, in other words, the show has to be about those characters and their situations and their stories. You have to actually write a real show that will capture the imagination of the audience watching it. And if you want to bring in stuff from the other shows, if you want to have legacy characters come in, you must do it in a way that feels organic and that makes sense within the world that you have created for your show. So if you want the show to be good, and you want the show to appeal to the audience you're making it for, you cannot write it in the lazy fan servicey way that, for example, Star Trek Picard was mostly written. You cannot do that. You have to actually do the work of being a writer and a storyteller and craft a genuinely good, self-contained, compelling show that is good in its own right and is about itself. And then you can do the fan servicey stuff if you want, just as sprinkles on top, which is how that kind of stuff should be done, if at all, anyway. So I think that's part of it with Prodigy. It's the fact that, like, you know, going in, you're writing for a new audience. And so you have to make a good show in its own right, first and foremost. A couple more super chats have come in from Kirok. Let me see. Part one, part of my problem with these shootings and part of my point is we remember the perp better than we do the victims. Also, if you lost someone you loved through violence, your first instinct is going to be violence. I'm not saying it's right, but it is human. I don't think that's necessarily true. I mean, I think for some people that is true, but I don't think it's necessarily true that everyone's first instinct would be violence. Some people have exactly the opposite reaction, you know, and actually, like, I've never experienced that personally. I have never been a victim of that kind of violence myself. I have never lost a loved one to that kind of violence. So, I mean, I don't know what my reaction would be. I can't tell you because it's never happened. And I have no idea how I would react to that kind of extreme situation, having not been in it. But I will tell you, and I'm sure you remember, after 9/11, which was an event that really fucked up this country for a good long time, and we are still living in the aftermath of that in many, many ways. After 9/11, there were people who just wanted to go out and fucking kill people in retaliation, right? They just wanted to, it's like I always joke about, in TNG, when Duras kills Kalar, Worf goes and kills him back, right? And that's what Americans wanted to do after 9/11. They wanted to go kill somebody back. But there were also Americans who did not have that reaction. There were also Americans who reacted with just deep, almost inexpressible sadness to the event. It's not that they didn't feel, maybe they did also feel anger, but their primary emotion was one of grief. And you can see it in the music that was made in the wake of 9/11. There were the Toby Keith songs, "We'll Put a Boot in Your Ass, It's the American," where there were like the patriotic rah-rah songs of, let's go get them, right? We're America, they can't fuck with us, let's go get them. Like, there were those songs. But I think the best post 9/11 song was the one by Alan Jackson, "Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning," which was written literally right after 9/11, right? Like it came out within months of the event. Like, it was a very, raw, immediate reaction to 9/11. And Alan Jackson's song, and he's a country singer, right? He plays to a very similar audience to what Toby Keith was playing to. But Alan Jackson's song was not angry. Alan Jackson's song was thoughtful and mournful and sad and beautiful. And it spoke to me much more than, the machine guns and rockets and fireworks and all of the, let's go invade somebody kind of thing. So, even to a national tragedy like that, where it is the result of an attack, on the people of the country from another place, like, the automatic reaction is not always violence for everybody. For some people, sure, but not everybody. Let's see, more super chats. Here's another one from Kirak. "I speak to you, one fellow human being to another." Well, that's the only way to do it. Oh, bye, Dana. Dana's battery's dying. Bye, Dana. Oh, Barbara, giving out gift memberships. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And hopefully, and it went to Joe. Hey, Joe, you got a gift membership, buddy. Oh, Der Alta Trekkie, I like your MacGyver reviews. I'm looking forward to you covering the Alien episode. Well, I'm not doing that one next, but it's just so weird you happen to mention it. There's another MacGyver video coming out next week. I wrote it earlier this week, and I'm shooting it tomorrow, and it will be out on Wednesday, is the current plan. So, yeah, it's not that episode, but it's another episode that I really like. So, I love those MacGyver. I love those MacGyver videos. Stephen G. Glenard, Steve Shives, Gone Country. Where's the Stetson? No, the baseball caps are the only acceptable hats. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry, some random geek. I know you don't agree with that. But to me, baseball caps are the only acceptable hats. So there will be no Stetson. I like a lot of country music. Most of it is older. There's not so much recent shit that I'm a fan of, and most of the recent shit that I am a fan of is more indie. It's not like the kind of stuff that they play on country radio stations. But no, I like a lot of country music. Oh, Isaiah says, for the patron hangout, can I share more of my con adventure? Sure, absolutely. Yeah. And by the way, yes, this Sunday is the patron member hangout on the channel, for those of you who are wondering. Sunday is not only the last Sunday of the month, it is the last day of the month. So yes, that will be this Sunday will be our patron member hangout. Oh, Emanon, here's the biggest, most important question Steve will ever get: crunchy or smooth? I like both, but smooth is what is in my cupboard. So, yeah. Air One Fire, there's a space alien in MacGyver. Yeah, kinda. There's kind of an alien episode, yeah. 255 AD says, you know, that proposed Archer show, do you think it's kind of ill-timed to make a show with a sympathetic president as its protagonist? It depends on how they approach it. I mean, look, I don't think just because Trump is a fucking monster, that doesn't mean that you can't make a show with a sympathetic president ever again, or while Trump is in charge. Like, you can do a show about a president and make it clear to the audience that they're not supposed to read Trump into this guy. Like, that's possible. Fitted base. Yes, thank you, Kane 20C. And look at that. That's a fitted one, baby. Yes, fitted baseball caps are the only acceptable hats. Yes, that is true. Thank you for that addition to that. Yes. Derogatory Trekkie, who is annoying MacGyver more, Penny or Jack? Even though they're best friends, I think Jack annoys MacGyver more. Because usually when MacGyver gets caught up in like some kind of misadventure with Penny, it's because he has come to her aid. Like, he sees that Penny is in over her head and he kind of chooses to get involved to help her out. Whereas Jack has the bad habit of like dragging MacGyver into stuff that he doesn't want to be involved with. So I think Jack is probably more annoying to MacGyver than Penny. Prosthetic Head says, if we achieved warp, would our society really become space explorers, or do we need to rise from the ashes of war? I mean, it would be nice. I don't think we need to rise from the ashes of war, but I do feel like at the current state that our society is in, just simply achieving faster than light travel would not be enough to bring us all together. Emanon, why should you never date a baker? They always need dough. That's the kind of joke I like. That's the kind of joke I like. Steve Schmeling, about your retro review of Dax, let's give the medical Klingon his own spin-off. Dr. Claw, medicine Klingon. He heals until it hurts. I'm down with that. Stephen G. Clenard, as a wise man once said, I like mine rich and creamy, but I'm not opposed to chunks. Oh, some random geek. This is a good question. If you eat cereal and have milk with your cereal, how do you put milk and cereal in your bowl? Milk first or cereal first? This is something that I never knew was controversial before the internet. Because I always, to this day, when I have cereal and milk, I put cereal first and then I pour the milk over it. And then I eat the cereal. And if I'm only going to have one bowl of cereal, which is usually the case, sometimes I might have a second bowl, but if I'm going to only have one bowl of cereal, I finish the cereal and then I drink the milk from the bowl, and then that's it. I'm done. It never even occurred to me to put the milk in first and then add the cereal. It feels like that's getting it backwards. That's treating the milk like it's the main ingredient. And to me, the milk is not the main ingredient. The cereal is the main ingredient, and the milk is just an additive to the cereal. You know, but people see it the other way. It never even occurred to me that people would put the milk in first, but some people do. But no, I am a cereal first guy. Der Alta Trekkie says, you think that President Red Hulk was a comment on Trump? I mean, on his impulsiveness, not on his quasi-heroics. Well, I think it has to be read that way. Yeah, I mean, Trump was not president when they were making that movie, but Trump had been president relatively recently. So, I mean, I do think there was some intentional paralleling of Trump there for sure. I think the people who made the movie were hoping that it would not be quite as current of a commentary as it turned out being. 285 AD says, how do you feel about the idea of the Federation's first president being cishet white human man? I have no problem whatsoever with the human part. I mean, I think given the tradition of Star Trek being inclusive and representative, I would love it if the first president was something other than a cishet white man. But I really don't tie myself in knots over the human thing. I'd be completely fine if Starfleet and the Federation was on screen depicted as mostly human. I don't give a shit about the aliens. But yeah, something other than a cishet white man as the Federation's first president, that I think that would be in keeping with the spirit of Star Trek for sure. Brelly Ghost says, do you remember the MacGyver spin-off pilot episode about the Colton brothers and their English bulldog frog? Yes, of course. The backdoor pilot. Yes, I remember that, where MacGyver shows up for like 5 minutes and he's like, well, I guess I'll leave you Colton brothers to it. You know? Yeah, I remember that episode. Oh, thank you, Eldridge Davis. Eldridge Davis says, love you, Steve. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Oh, 255AD, how do you feel about putting OJ on cereal? On cereal? No. Having a glass of OJ with cereal? Absolutely. But putting it on the cereal, that should be a death penalty offense. Isaiah Taylor says, what are your opinions on the Ambassador class starships? It's my favorite, dethroning the Galaxy class. It looks more functional. It's the ship in my fan show. Yeah. I got nothing against the Ambassador class. I mean, just because we get a lot more exposure to them, I tend to favor the ships that were the classes of ships that were used for hero ships in the shows, you know, rather than the ones that we just kind of saw for one episode. So, you know, I mean, I prefer, like, I mean, I wouldn't put the Galaxy class at the top of my list either. Like I've said before, like I really like the Constitution class refit from the classic era movies, and also the Enterprise, the Constitution class from like the Discovery Strange New Worlds depiction of it. Those are probably my favorites. But no, the Ambassador class is cool. It's a good, and it's nice that they made a new model, you know, instead of just reusing like the Excelsior again. Steve Schmaling says, I pour both milk and cereal at the same time directly into my mouth. Well, that doesn't offend anyone. So good for you for finding the perfect way to do it. Well, Don Quixote, now see, that's fine. Don Quixote says, what if you want a little more cereal and you still have milk left in the bowl? Well, in that case, then yes, you can add cereal. Yes, that's fine. That's fine to me, right? It's fine no matter how you do it. I'm not like the boss, but to my way of thinking, yes, so you put cereal in the bowl, you add milk, you eat the cereal, there's still milk in the bowl, and you think, I want some more cereal. So yes, it's okay to add cereal to the milk. And it's also okay if there's, depending on the milk level that remains, you can even add more milk. But you add the cereal first, and then you add the additional milk. So you have leftover milk to which you add cereal. And then if you want, you add more milk to the milk that's already there. Yes, that's acceptable. That makes sense to me. I have done that before. Another super chat from Kirok. Thank you as always, my friend. In case I'm not able to make it to your hangout this Sunday, I am in season 8. Smallville question. Why didn't you warn me? Sob, sob. I thought we was friends. I cannot remember. I have no idea what you're talking about. I think I had probably stopped watching Smallville by that point, so I have no idea what you're crying about. I'm sorry. Yeah, Stephen G. Clenard says a running theme of Enterprise was that humans embodied by Archer were the key to uniting the squabbling Vulcans, Andorians, and Tellarites. Humans were technologically inferior, but their optimism and diplomacy were their strengths. Yeah, and that's kind of been a theme of Star Trek in general, at least since the TNG era as well. Like this idea that, and it's true in a Doylist way, that, well, the reason what makes humans special is that like humans are kind of the synthesis of all the different characteristics of the other races, right? Like we're capable of being logical like Vulcans, but we also have the ability to be passionate and to be forceful and, you know, to be imaginative. Like we're the ones that aren't just locked into a particular thing. We aren't just one thing like the Klingons or one thing like the Vulcans or one thing like the Romulans. So yeah, that's kind of been a, you know, like what makes humans unique? Well, it's our capacity for creativity and imagination and to see things from different perspectives and to blah, 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 you know? So yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's not necessarily the most realistic way to portray alien races, but allegorically and metaphorically, it makes sense given, you know, a lot of what Star Trek has tried to accomplish over the years. And it does explain why humans would be so central to the Federation. Oh, your whole point was Smallville has lost its mind. Okay. I mean, I'm willing to go with you there. 255 AD says, you ever get the vibe that the original creation of Archer as a character was them thinking, well, we've had black guy and woman, better have another normal white man? Yes. In fact, I would be shocked if Rick Berman did not express that to somebody at some point during the development of the show, even if only privately to Brandon Braga, and then follow it up with, no, don't tell anybody I said that. That would not surprise me at all if Rick Berman not only had that thought, but said to his partner, yeah, you know, now that we've had a woman and a black guy, it's time to do another white guy. Yeah. Given how, and that's kind of, that's an inherently sexist and racist thought to have. But I don't think that Rick Berman is a purposefully, you know, an intentionally sexist or racist guy. I think he's just incredibly risk averse. And I think, you know, when they were developing Enterprise, following from Deep Space Nine and Voyager, I think Rick Berman, of all people, was probably the guy who said, well, we don't want to ask any more of the audience, as though presenting them shows with a black protagonist and a female protagonist was somehow making just an incredible demand on the audience. But in Rick Berman's mind, it's like, well, we've asked too much of the audience. Let's bring them back to their comfort level and put a white guy in charge again. What do you say? I would not be surprised at all if that was a conversation that took place, or at the very least a thought that was in his head. Eldridge Davis says, I've got to say, Steve, your most recent Gavin Newsom video was extremely well done and simultaneously very unnerving. Well, thank you for saying it was well done. And I mean, unnerving was kind of the point. Yeah. It's when I was writing it thinking, well, I hope people think this is funny, but funny in a way that also kind of makes them want to cry. That's kind of sort of the target I was aiming at there. Oh, Chipetigo. Hey, Steve, just wanted to say hi. So hi. Well, hi, Chipetigo. Good to see you. Sermon Geek says, have you seen Farscape? I have not seen Farscape. A ton of people have asked me if I have watched Farscape, and I have never watched it. Not because I'm intentionally avoiding it. I just haven't gotten around to watching it. I hear it's good. Prosthetic head. Now, this is an interesting question. If Enterprise had been more successful, what kind of show would have followed? That's a really good question. I don't know. If Enterprise had not briefly killed off the franchise, what would have come after it? That's a really interesting question. Well, first of all, I wonder if, even though they had kind of put a button on things with Nemesis, I wonder if Enterprise had been a more successful show, if they wouldn't have tried to squeeze a couple more movies out of the TNG crew. Who knows? I mean, remember, the TNG crew only got 4 movies, you know. Not that it's a matter of, well, they deserve more, but like the classic Trek crew got 6 movies all to themselves, and the TNG crew only got 4. So if Enterprise had been a success and there was the sense that there was more of an appetite for Star Trek at the time, I wonder if they would have tried to do a few more movies with like the TNG crew. As for TV shows, who knows? I mean, that was the era where people were doing prequels of everything, but that was also quite a bit before the current era of everything has to be a legacy. Everything has to have legacy characters. Everything has to be fan service, right? So I would like to think that it might still have been possible at that point to do an original Star Trek show, you know? And I don't know what era it would have been set in, hopefully post Voyager, or maybe just done in a way where, like, I would love to do a Star Trek show where it doesn't fucking matter what era it's set in. Set it in whatever era has the fucking best uniforms. I don't fucking care. It shouldn't matter what era the show is set in. But you know, maybe it would have been a show like the kind of show that I've been hoping that somebody would make in Star Trek again, about a ship we've never heard of, run by characters we've never met. You know, and I mean, I have no idea what that show would be. But if perhaps if Enterprise had been more successful and they hadn't kind of, you know, gone silent for several years after that, maybe we would have gotten a show like that. Kurok says, "Did you forget TNG had Picard?" Well, this would have been after that, though. The premise was after a black protagonist in Deep Space Nine and a woman protagonist in Voyager, that Rick Berman went back to the perceived, you know, sort of default safe mode of putting a white guy in charge. So I wasn't forgetting Picard. I'm just saying that they had already, well, we did a black guy and a woman, so it's time to do a regular white guy again. Maybe a DS9 or Voyager. I don't know, Joe. I don't think a DS9 or a Voyager movie was ever in the cards, to be completely honest. And with Deep Space Nine especially, like, I really don't know what that would have been. Like, Deep Space Nine never really seemed, especially after, like, post the series, like after everything was over and how they resolved it, I really don't know what the movie is. You know, like, what's the movie? And also, I mean, even with Voyager, like, just from a creative perspective, they made it home. Like, the story's over. The show's over. What's the Voyager movie? The show's over. They made it home. You know? Do they get lost again? Like, do they get thrown, like, to the other side of the galaxy again? Like, what's the story? Or is it just like a generic Star Trek movie just with Captain Janeway instead of Captain Picard? Like, but no, I really don't think of a Deep Space Nine or a Voyager movie was ever in the cards. I think if they had made more movies post Enterprise, that they probably, at least for a little while, they probably would have been TNG movies. And then maybe they would have ended up doing the Kelvin timeline reboot anyway. I'm not sure. Kirog with a super chat. How did they, how about the return of Cisco? They did him dirty. How did they do him dirty? I don't understand. How, I know you're not the only person who says that. How did they do Cisco dirty? The show is over. Like, there's no more show. I mean, just because he went into the wormhole and said, "I'll be back someday," like, that doesn't mean they did him dirty by not doing another thing where he comes back. The show's over, man. like, okay, the ending of All-Star Superman. The ending of All-Star Superman is Superman has transformed into a fully solar life form, and he has gone to live in the sun and keep the sun alive so that, you know, Earth doesn't die. And we see Lois Lane back on Earth saying, you know, I know that someday Superman's going to finish his job there and he's going to come back and I'm going to be waiting for him when that day comes. And then the story ends. So did they do Superman dirty by not having a sequel come out where he comes back? Like, I don't get that line of thinking. The story's over. The story ends with Cisco going to the wormhole to be with the prophets and promising Cassidy that one day he will return. Okay, that's the end of the story. It's the last episode. How is it doing him dirty to not follow up on that? Like, I really don't get that line of thinking. It's like saying, well, sure, you showed what happened when he graduated high school, but you didn't show what happened the day after. They did that character dirty. What? You know, and Kara says the Starfleet Academy show. I mean, that Starfleet Academy concept has been around in one form or another since I think the late 80s. Like there have been multiple pitches. Sometimes it was a movie, sometimes it was a TV show, sometimes it was like Kirk the early years. I think at one point it was going to be Picard the early years, but like there has been a Starfleet Academy show that has kind of floated around in the ether in Star Trek for quite a long time. So maybe it would have been an earlier version of the Starfleet Academy series that they are now doing in a different form. You know, they're finally actually doing it. Maybe it would have been if Enterprise had not been canceled. Maybe. Nah, Air One Fire. I don't think it's a bad ending. I mean, at least not for. I think for Cisco, given where they had taken Cisco up to that point, I thought it was a perfectly fine ending for him. I mean, I feel like if you had started taking him in a different direction, like maybe a couple of seasons before, you could have taken him to a different place. But given where Cisco was headed, you know, in the latter portion of the series, I'm not saying that's the only possible ending he could have had, but I think the ending he gets makes sense, you know. John Day. Oh, thank you, my friend. By the way, I'm going to start wrapping things up here. So if anybody has any final questions, go ahead and throw them in there, and then I'll do my usual wrap up spiel at the end. But John says, thank you for the super chat, by the way. Did you like the movies Space Cowboys and or Contact? I really liked Contact. I am not a fan of Space Cowboys. I don't think Space Cowboys is a very good movie at all. I love all the actors in it. It's a fucking amazing cast, but it's schlock. It's a movie that Clint Eastwood made so he could make another movie, basically. It's part of the old, they used to have I don't know if they still do this or not, but it's you do one for them and then you do one for you. And that's been Clint Eastwood's entire directorial career. He does a commercial movie and then he does the movie he really wants to make, right? And Space Cowboys was, I'll do this one for the studio, you know, so I can make whatever his next passion project was at that point. I can't remember I can't figure out which one it would have been, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of Space Cowboys. Okay, now I see questions pouring into the chat. I will get to those in a minute, but first, thank you all so much for being with me for this show. I appreciate the questions, I appreciate the comments, I appreciate the company, I appreciate the super chats and all of the generosity that you have shown me tonight. Thank you all so much. Don't forget, if you enjoy what I do here on YouTube and you would like to help me to continue to do it, the easiest ways to do that are to become a patron by going to patreon.com/Steve Shives, or to become a channel member by simply clicking the join button here on the YouTube page. And either way, whether you become a patron or a member, at any level of support as a patron or a member, one of the benefits that you unlock for yourself is the ability to submit questions ahead of time for these Ask Away live streams. The call for questions goes up on the Monday of the week, where there's going to be one of these on Friday. And for the next couple of these, you'll have a 1,000 character limit for your question. And then after that, it'll be 500 characters just to hopefully move things along. But yeah, so all patrons and members are able to do that if they wish and submit questions ahead of time. And those are the questions I answer in the first part of the show. Also, if you enjoy what I do here on YouTube, you might be interested in the podcasts that I am on. In addition to YouTube, I also am a co-star on a couple of awesome podcasts that are a part of the Let Me Listen family of podcasts. There is a Late Seating, the movie review podcast I do alongside the great Jason Harding, where we take a look at classic films and see if they live up to their reputation, be it good or bad. And pardon me. And I have completely blanked on what our most recent Late Seating episode was. It was Captain America the Winter Soldier. Of course it was. One of my favorite MCU movies. So you can hear our review of Captain America the Winter Soldier on the most recent Late Seating. And also, in addition to Late Seating, I'm a cast member on the Ensign's Log, the Star Trek themed comedy podcast that I'm also on alongside Jason and our pal and co-star who joined us last season, Amanda Billings. And she is wonderful and has been a fantastic addition to the show. And we all play original characters who live in the Star Trek universe and like sort of Star Trek stuff from the actual show. We're in the midst of Deep Space Nine at the moment. Kind of happens in the background while we're busy with having our own adventures and getting into our own sorts of trouble. So if you enjoy Star Trek stuff, if you enjoy funny Star Trek stuff, if you enjoy funny Star Trek stuff that kind of takes the piss out of Star Trek a little bit, I think you'll enjoy the Ensign's Log. And we've just begun our 8th season, if you can believe it. So if you haven't listened to the Ensign's Log, there's a whole bunch you can catch up on if you're interested. So check that out. Links in the description. Also, please remember charitylinks.page for some friends of ours who need a helping hand financially. That list is maintained by our pal, Some Random Geek, who also posted individual links in the chat earlier. If you are at all able to help out, please consider doing so and making use of those links to help out some friends of ours who need a helping hand. Well, I'm going to take one last look at the chat here and answer some final questions, and then that'll be it, everybody. Usopp says, "Hey, chat, what's the current vibe?" About to be over. That's the current vibe. John Day says, "Thank you, Steve. Great channel. I appreciate you, my friend." Stephen G. Clenard says the strength of the TNG finale was due to the weakness of the overall series. No storylines or character arcs to wrap up. Well, sort of. I agree, but I mean, I wouldn't say that's the weakness of the overall series. But I do think you're right in the sense that because there were no ongoing storylines to tie up, they did have to dig a little deeper and write an episode that was not an ending for the plot of the series, but was like an emotional and a thematic capstone for the series. And I think that's why All Good Things is the best finale, right? Because it's like a spiritual ending for the show instead of a plot ending for the show. So I agree with you in that sense. Or 250 total if you double post. I'm working on how to figure that out, Steven. I can't, if there was like a setting I could put in there and say, but if they post twice, make it 250. That's a little, it's beyond my, it's beyond my capabilities at the moment. Eldridge Davis, thank you very much. Says, "I appreciate you, Steve. You're a real gem. Glad to have your voice in the public discourse." Thank you very much. Dun, dun, dun. Barbara Kruger says, "I'm a newish patron, but what form of support gives the creator the most money, the best percentage?" I honestly don't think it makes a huge difference. If you're a patron, then thank you very much. And if that works for you, you can continue to be a patron as far as I'm concerned. I don't think the split is all that different of, patron versus member. I mean, there probably is a difference, but I don't know if it's certainly not big enough that I know about it or care about it. So if you are a patron, thank you very, very much for becoming a patron, Barbara. And if that works for you, then as far as I'm concerned, you can just keep going with that. Hey, Matthew. And hopefully you'll be able to squeeze in Sunday. I hope so too. And once again, reminder, our patron and member hangout is Sunday at noon Eastern. 255 AD says, "What would you rather have, a 29th century Starfleet time travel show or 22nd century Romulan war show?" Oh God, the time travel show. The time travel show. I could not give less of a fuck about the Romulan war. I cannot express to you how little I care about the Romulan war. No, between those options, all day the fucking time travel show. All day. Just don't ever travel back to the Romulan War because I don't care about that. One last super chat from Kirok. Thank you, my friend. Says, "Lastly, idea. When these tragedies do happen, we focus more on the people committing these evil deeds rather than those who actually matter, the victims." I agree with you, and that is a shame, and we should not forget the victims, not just the victims of these crimes, but the victims of all crimes. You know, I mean, we need to remember, like, especially people who are big fans of like true crime stories. You know, don't get so drawn into sort of the lurid sensationalist parts of it that you forget that, like, you're reading about stuff or listening or watching stuff that's based on real crimes that actually affected real people's lives. You know, like, don't lose the human element of it. That's very important. All right, I believe that is it. Oh, Air One Fire. What if it's a good Romulan war show? Well, then, like I always say, it's, you know, it's the execution that matters. If it's a good Romulan war show, then good for it. Then I'll say, well, look at that, they made a good Romulan war show. But buddy, it's gonna have to be really fucking good. All right, that's it, everybody. I'm calling it a night. Thank you all so very much for hanging out with me, and especially those of you who were generous with super chats. I really appreciate it. I will see you, some of you at least, on Sunday at noon Eastern for our monthly patron and member hangout, and I'll see you a bunch of times after that for various videos, and I'll see you in 2 weeks for another one of these. So thank you all so much. Have a good night, have a good weekend, and take care of yourselves, everybody.